Chapter 47:27. There was no reason. This was almost her instinctive thought. In any case, she must guard Lin Yi. As for the serious consequences of staying here, Hui Yudi didn't think much about it at all. Anyway, it was useless to think too much at this time. You're not leaving? Then you really can't leave. The two masters suddenly looked at each other and couldn't help but be shocked. If you stay here, I don't know how long you'll have to wait. It's unknown when the next trial will start. You should know that our West Island trial doesn't open regularly. If you're lucky, it may only open once a year. If you're unlucky, it may open for decades or even hundreds of years. It depends on the week period of the formation. I understand. I understand what you two sisters said, but I can't leave him here alone. I appreciate your kindness, but you don't need to persuade me anymore, Hui Yudi said firmly. The two masters looked at each other and their faces were moved. Although they felt sorry for Hui Yudi, such an affectionate and righteous woman deserved everyone's respect. Since the other party had made up her mind, it was futile for them to persuade her. After all, they didn't know each other. It was already very good that they could do this. Well, but you have to be careful when you stay here. Find a hidden place nearby to hide. If there's nothing else, it's best not to go inside again. I believe you know what those guys are like, not to mention they have profound ascending stage masters. You can't beat them. The two masters sighed. They couldn't continue to waste time here, so they could only give this last kind reminder. Thank you, two sisters. Hui Yudi nodded. After watching the two masters leave, she quietly stayed by Lin Yi's side, looking at him blankly. No one knew what she was thinking in her mind. At the same time, on the other side, in the side courtyard of the West Island's palace, all the challengers who came out one after another had gathered in the open space next to it. It was bustling and crowded. Although the trial of West Island itself didn't stipulate the so-called trial time, today was the deadline of 1 month. In terms of objective conditions, this was already the actual deadline of the trial. If they didn't come out after today, it meant that they couldn't come out at all. At this moment, in order to congratulate the successful return of the trial takers, in order to show their solemnity. This time, it wasn't West Island's deputy island master Yen Xinlan who presided over the overall situation, but West Island's island master herself, Ning Shangling. Compared to the previous birthday banquet, Ning Shangling was clearly much closer to the crowd this time. With a friendly smile on her face, she leisurely walked among the crowd and waved to everyone from time to time. Wherever Ning Shangling passed, the crowd would burst into an uproar. To be able to come into contact with this beautiful island lord, who had always been high and mighty at such a close distance, all the trial takers felt genuinely flattered. Of course, even if they had some dirty thoughts in their hearts, they would never dare to show it in this place. Ning Shangling was like an empress in West Island. If anyone dared to blaspheme it, no matter how strong he was, he couldn't walk out of West Island alive. Behind the beautiful Ning Shangling was Ning Xuefei, who was as pure as a fairy. According to the rules, the princess of West Island could not easily show her face in public, but the trial of West Island this time was a little special, and it was related to her marriage. Her future husband was very likely to be among this group of trial takers, so it was reasonable for her to follow her mother to appease the crowd. As Ning Xuefei's best friends, Shanghai Laner and Han Jingjing naturally stayed by her side. At this time, the three women were not in the mood to watch the fun, and they frequently looked at the exit of the transmission formation. Han Jingjing had already told Ning Xuefei and Shanghai Laner that Lin Yi was seriously injured and in a coma. Although they knew that someone was taking care of him, they still couldn't help but worry and be nervous. If Ning Shangling hadn't forbidden them, the three of them would have run to the transmission formation to wait for him. If they could, they even wished they could be transmitted in. Time went by bit by bit. Seeing that the trial takers hadn't come out for a long time, the three women couldn't help but become more and more anxious. Was there any problem? After all, the three of them had investigated the matter of the teleportation circle. While it wasn't entirely impossible to teleport an unconscious Lin Yi over, it was still an extremely difficult task. At this point in time, one could only imagine the price the enemy had to pay. There were two choices, either to keep herself or to keep Lin Yi. If it were the three of them, they would definitely sacrifice themselves to transmit Lin Yi out without hesitation. But the other party was just a strange woman whom they had just met. Would she do that? No one knew the answer, so they could only wait. However, under the expectation of the three women, Lin Yi's figure didn't appear for a long time. Until the two guards of West Island came back, Lin Yi still didn't come out. Han Jingjing and Shanghai Laner looked at each other, and their faces suddenly became a little pale. Ning Xuefei almost fainted on the spot at this moment. This wasn't just related to Lin Yi's safety, it was also related to her marriage. She had practically pinned all her hopes on Lin Yi, and the blow she suffered at this moment was so heavy that she couldn't bear it. There's no one inside? At this moment, a woman suddenly rushed up and hurriedly asked the 2 guards of West Island who had just walked out of the transmission formation. This person was the East Continent's Morning Pride Academy's vice headmaster, Lu Ziyu. As the leader of the East Continent Academy this time, Lu Ziyu's every action represented the East Continent Academy. So, she had always spoken appropriately and had never lost her composure as she did now. At this moment, her expression was extremely ugly, even more so than Ning Xuefei and the other 2 women. Because not only had Lin Yi not come out, her precious disciple, Huiyuti, had also not come out. To her, Huiyuti was not only the most important personal disciple, but in a sense she was also like a mother and daughter. She had painstakingly brought her up from infancy, and this kind of relationship was far from that of an ordinary master-disciple relationship. The 2 guards of West Island were instantly shocked, and took a closer look at Lu Ziyu. Knowing that she was a good friend of Island Master Ning Shangling, they didn't dare to slight her and immediately replied respectfully, "There's a woman beside the transmission formation, and a man whose status is unknown. However, like the rest of the people, they probably won't be able to come out." Chapter 47-28. So that affectionate girl was actually Lu Ziyu's personal disciple. The 2 West Island guards instantly came to a realization and then explained, that girl could have come out herself, but in order to accompany the man whose life or death is unknown, she took the initiative to give up this opportunity. She has already made up her mind. The 2 of us tried to persuade her for a long time, but it was useless. What? That girl would stay behind for a man? Lu Ziyu couldn't help but frown, his gaze sweeping across the crowd, finally landing on Ren Zhongyuan, Yi Xiaotian and Yao Jieli. Lu Ziyu understood this precious disciple of his very well. Although this girl was very powerful and she wasn't young in terms of age, she had spent most of her time in seclusion training these past few years, and her temperament was even purer than some ordinary girls. In Morning Pride Academy with Huiyuti's status, ordinary disciples wouldn't dare to easily strike up a conversation with her, and among all the disciples of the academy who had come to the West Island this time, the only ones who could really talk to her were Ren Zhongyuan and the other 2, especially Ren Zhongyuan, who had been trying to pursue Huiyuti all these years. If it was said that during this training the relationship between the 2 of them had progressed, and Huiyuti had chosen to stay behind for Ren Zhongyuan's sake, Lu Ziyu could more or less understand it. But now that Ren Zhongyuan had already returned, who would she be guarding? Lu Ziyu couldn't help but start to suspect. Could it be that the girl these 2 West Island guards were talking about was actually not his own disciple Huiyuti, but someone else? You're saying that Sister Huiyuti took the initiative to stay behind in order to take care of Brother Lin Yi? Han Jingjing suddenly came up at this moment, and couldn't wait to confirm with the West Island guards. The 2 West Island guards who had just come out looked at each other. They were very familiar with Han Jingjing, who had lived here for a few years, and said with some uncertainty, "We also don't know if that man and woman are the Lin Yi and Huiyuti you mentioned. We only know that the man's injuries are very serious, and there's a very large hole in his stomach. It looks like he won't be able to survive." "There's no mistake, that's Brother Lin Yi," Han Jingjing confirmed, and then winked at Ning Xuefei and Shangguan Lan'er, who were anxious next to her. He gestured for them to relax a little. Since Huiyuti didn't hesitate to throw her life away and insisted on staying inside to accompany Lin Yi, it proved that Lin Yi wasn't dead yet. Otherwise, what was the point of her guarding inside? From Han Jingjing's point of view, as long as her big brother Lin Yi wasn't dead, then there must be a way to get out. This kind of thing definitely wouldn't be a problem for big brother Lin Yi. When Lu Ziyu heard Han Jingjing's words, she couldn't help but frown. Although she didn't know how Han Jingjing could be so sure, judging from her appearance. It was as if that woman was indeed his precious disciple. The fact that Huiyuti was safe and sound made her heave a sigh of relief. It was just that her precious disciple had actually stayed behind for a man. Moreover, it was a man that she had never met before. This matter was truly strange. What? Brother Ling is heavily injured and won't be able to survive? How is this possible? Qi Wenhan, who was not far away, immediately turned pale with fright when he heard this. He and Xia Luoluo were not greedy for heavenly treasures, and this trial was more like an outing for the 2 of them. Therefore, after they had harvested something, they had left early. These past few days they had been waiting to reunite with Lin Yi. But in the end he received this grievous news. Qi Wenhan's vision darkened, and he nearly fainted. Fortunately, Xia Luoluo supported him from the side, and he barely managed to stabilize himself. Wenhan, don't be anxious. With Brother Ling's abilities he might not necessarily die. Let's figure this out first. Xia Luoluo comforted softly. She had a good impression of Lin Yi, especially since he was Qi Wenhan's big backer. If something really happened this time, then the matter between her and Qi Wenhan would inevitably have another variable. At this moment, within the crowd, Ren Zhongyuan and the others were also paying close attention to the movement of the teleportation array. Especially Ren Zhongyuan. Like Lu Ziyu, he had always been anticipating Hui Yudi's figure, but unfortunately the person he loved had not appeared even after a long time. Now, after hearing these words, Ren Zhongyuan's heart was instantly filled with mixed feelings. Lin Yi was about to die, and this was considered good news to him. Basically, any man who got close to Hui Yudi was someone who deserved to die in his eyes. However, the pure and clean goddess in his heart, Hui Yudi, was actually willing to risk her life to accompany this fellow who was about to die. How could Ren Zhongyuan, as her pursuer, endure this? At the same time, the expressions of the other two people in the crowd were somewhat complicated. These two people were the ones who had caused Lin Yi's fatal injuries, Su Lingchong and Kang Mingming. After these few days of recuperation, Kang Mingming had already completely recovered. After all, Lin Yi had only just grasped the power of lightning, and its power was really limited. Kang Mingming was only in a more miserable state when he was electrocuted. Relying on the tenacious vitality of a high-level cultivator, he was already able to move freely after a few days. Otherwise he would not have been able to teleport back. Now that they heard the news that Lin Yi was about to die, Su Lingchong and Kang Mingming could not help but look at each other. In reality, from the way they saw it, Lin Yi was definitely going to die. No matter who it was, they would not be able to survive after having such a big hole in their stomach. Lin Yi was still able to struggle at death's door. It could only be said that this fellow's vitality was really terrifyingly tenacious. But even so, in their eyes, Lin Yi was already a dead man. Getting rid of such a sworn enemy was, of course, a great thing for them. But the problem was, how could they explain this to their superiors? Before this, because Su Lingchong was afraid of being blamed by his superiors, he did not dare to say it was so serious when he wrote the action report. He only briefly mentioned that they had injured Lin Yi, and that Lin Yi could not recover in a short period of time. He might not be able to come out for the time being, and it was estimated that he would be trapped in the trial ground for the next few years. When the mysterious man received his report, he saw that Lin Yi was only temporarily trapped, so he did not say much. But now this matter was exposed in public and now everyone knew about it. This matter was about to be exposed. Headache. At this moment, Su Lingchong and Kang Mingming both had a headache and did not know what to say. Killing Lin Yi was already a violation of their superiors' strict orders, and now they had to add a felony of deceiving their superiors. When the mysterious man found out, he would definitely be furious. At that time, there might be a cruel and inhumane punishment. What should they do? On the other side, after hearing the conversation between the two guards of West Island and Han Jingjing, two powerful experts with cold auras also showed a shocked expression. These two were the top figures in the younger generation of North Island. One was Ram Jie and the other was Lan Tiefu. Chapter 47-29. But in the eyes of these two people, whether it was Ram Jie or Lan Tiefu, there were some hidden meanings that people couldn't quite understand. They didn't feel pity for the death of Lin Yi, a genius junior, but there seemed to be some inexplicable solemnity in their eyes. Except for these people, the rest of the people who heard the words more or less stirred up, but they didn't care about it. After all, whether it was Lin Yi or Hui Yudi, they had nothing to do with these people, and they didn't gather here for these two people. For them, it didn't matter whether Lin Yi died or not. They only cared about one thing, which was who could laugh to the end in this West Island trial and finally become the son-in-law of Ning Shangling, the island owner of West Island. Today was the objective deadline of the trial, and it was also the time to check the harvest of all the trial takers. If everything went well, it was likely that the result would be out within today, so Ning Shangling showed up in person. But now that everything had happened so suddenly, Ning Xuefei, who was the main character, had suffered a huge blow. Her face was pale and she could not even stand properly. She had to rely on Han Jingjing and Shangguan Lan'er to support her to maintain her balance. As for Lu Ziyu, the leader of the East Continent Academy, who was an important guest, he also had a worried look on his face. He was obviously not in the right state. In this case, it was obviously not appropriate to continue to operate according to the original plan. Ning Shangling pondered for a moment and changed her mind, then she ordered Yan Xinlan, the deputy island owner, to come forward and announce, "Everyone, please take out the trophies you got in this trial. We have special staff to register them." After that, you can go back and have a rest. We will choose a day to invite guests to judge. As for the specific follow-up, please go back and wait patiently for the news." Hearing this, everyone was suddenly disappointed. They all thought that the result would be out today, but they didn't expect that they still had to wait. For those trial takers who thought they had a chance to stand out, this waiting process was undoubtedly a kind of torture. However, since Yan Xinlan had already announced it in public, what was done could not be undone. It was useless for them to object. In fact, no one dared to object. At most, they just complained a little in private. When the disciples of West Island came to register their trophies, they left one after another. As soon as Su Lingchong and Kang Mingming returned to the room of the envoy's mansion in West Island, before they could sit down and take a breath, a bloody bat came to them. It carried the mysterious man's handwritten order. "Regarding Lin Yi's matter, you must give us an explanation. Otherwise you'll have to bear the consequences." The tone of the handwritten letter was extremely harsh. This time it didn't even use code words. It could be seen that the mysterious man was really angry. Looking at the fierce handwriting, Su Lingchong and Kang Mingming's eyelids twitched violently. Although it was just a sentence of "bear the consequences," which did not seem too scary at first glance, it was the mysterious man who said it. Behind these 4 words, their life and death were directly decided. Su Lingchong and Kang Mingming had no doubt that if they couldn't give a reasonable reason and explanation this time, they would definitely be in big trouble. It was even possible that they would die because of it. "What should we do? Hurry up and think of a way." Su Lingchong's voice was harsh, and at the same time, he looked at Kang Mingming with an unkind look. If they couldn't find a decent reason, he was ready to take this guy as a scapegoat. Only in this way could he escape the disaster. Yes, child Su, don't worry. There will be a way. There must be a way." Kang Mingming was so scared that he quivered in his heart. Although he didn't have any great wisdom, he was never short of petty cleverness. Especially this kind of insidious and vicious thing, he was an expert. As soon as he saw Su Lingchong's eyes, he knew what this guy was thinking. "You'd better come up with a way. Otherwise, if the higher-ups really investigate, one of us must die. It's up to you." Su Lingchong said coldly. Yes. Kang Mingming was so anxious that his forehead was full of sweat. Seeing that there was a hint of killing intent in the other party's eyes, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration and said, "I got it, child Su, I have an idea." "What idea? Say it quickly." Su Lingchong urged hurriedly. "Child Su, although Lin Yi's injury is very serious, he still hasn't died until now. This means that he most likely won't die. I know this guy very well. His vitality is very strong. In the past, this kind of situation happened several times, but he didn't die. It will definitely be the same this time. Besides, if he really can't make it, why is the girl still guarding him?" Kang Mingming nervously licked his lips and analyzed carefully. This makes sense. Su Lingchong's eyes lit up when he heard that. As long as it proved that Lin Yi wouldn't die, the higher-ups should not be so persistent in this matter. Then the 2 of them could also escape a disaster. Immediately, he nodded and said, "Okay, I'll reply as you said." After the 2 of them sent out the letter, they stayed in the room and didn't go out, waiting for the mysterious person's reply anxiously. If they couldn't explain it in this way, they would really have to bear the consequences. After waiting for a long time in fear and trepidation, the 2 of them finally waited for the bloodbath. They couldn't wait to open the mysterious person's letter. There was only one sentence on it: "For the sake of the Thunder Shen Vine, don't do it again." Su Lingchong and Kang Mingming looked at each other, then let out a long sigh of turbid air, sat on the ground like a deflated ball, and didn't move for a long time. This time they were really scared, but fortunately they escaped a disaster. They were fine here, but on the other side, Ning Xuefei directly fainted after returning to the island owner's temporary imperial residence. She was under too much pressure. Even if Han Jingjing had comforted her in a low voice, it didn't help. Previously she could still hold on the way, but after returning to the room she only felt dizzy and immediately fainted. This scene really gave Ning Shangling a big fright. She hurriedly carefully examined Ning Xuefei and found that there was nothing wrong with her body except a little fever. As long as she slept, she should get better. Only then did the island owner of West Island finally let out a sigh of relief. With her 2 best friends, Shanghai Laner and Han Jingjing, accompanying her, Ning Shangling had nothing to worry about. She immediately took her people out of the room. It was impossible for her to personally accompany Ning Xuefei. After all, as the island owner of West Island, there were still many things to do, such as comforting Lu Ziyu, who was also burning with anxiety. Staying at the bedside of Ning Xuefei, Although Han Jingjing and Shanghai Laner were also very anxious, they were much better than Ning Xuefei. For them, as long as Lin Yi was alive, that was enough. Chapter 47:30. She would feel that it was her fault that Lin Yi fell into this situation. If it weren't for her, Lin Yi wouldn't have gone to participate in the trial of West Island at all, and he wouldn't have been seriously injured like this. If it weren't for this, Ning Xuefei wouldn't have fainted. No one would be able to bear such a big thing, let alone a simple little girl like her. Waiting on the side, Han Jingjing whispered a few words to Shanghai Laner, then she took out her mobile phone and dialed a number. She couldn't help but feel a little nervous. She didn't know if she could still get through the phone. After she bought these 2 mobile phones, she installed solar charging panels. After all, in a place like Heaven Stage Island, there was basically no other way to charge it except solar energy. Although she didn't have to worry too much about the power problem, if the weather on the trial land was bad and there was no sun for a long time, then it would be hard to say. Fortunately, after waiting for a while, the phone finally beeped, indicating that the phone was connected. Han Jingjing reluctantly breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at Han Jingjing's movements, Shanghai Laner, who was next to her, also pricked up her ears. Although she had learned about Lin Yi's condition from the 2 guards of West Island, both she and Han Jingjing wanted to confirm it with Hui Yudi in person. They waited patiently, but after a few seconds, Han Jingjing suddenly froze. "What's wrong?" Shanghai Laner thought that something had happened, so she quickly asked anxiously. She hung up on me?" Han Jingjing said in a daze. Before she finished speaking, her mobile phone suddenly rang. She quickly picked it up and said, "Hello, is this Sister Hui Yudi? I'm Han Jingjing." "Oh, it's me." Hui Yudi's embarrassed voice came from the phone. It was a pure mistake just now. She only knew how to make a phone call. But she didn't know how to answer the phone. She was so excited that she hung up the phone so she could only call back quickly. "Sister Hua, how is Brother Lin Yi now?" Under the urging gaze of Shanghai Laner, Han Jingjing didn't have time to chat. She asked quickly. "His aura and pulse are almost the same as before. Although it's very weak, he can still barely maintain it. However, I don't know how long he can last like this." Hui Yudi said worriedly. Lin Yi's current condition couldn't be said to be good. He could only be said to be hanging by a thread. If he was in the secular world, he would be in a state of critical illness at all times. If he could endure it, everything would be fine. But if there was even the slightest mishap, he would immediately die. "Sister Hua, remember one thing. To Big Brother Lin Yi, no change is the best news, so you must have faith in him." Han Jingjing encouraged her. "And I understand. Don't worry, I will take good care of him." Hui Yudi was obviously much calmer now. "Thank you, Big Sister Hua. If it weren't for you, we really wouldn't know what to do. It's all thanks to you accompanying Big Brother Lin Yi. You must take care of yourselves. We will wait for your safe return in West Island." Han Jingjing was sincerely grateful. Apart from other things, Hui Yudi was willing to stay in the trial ground for Lin Yi. This alone had already moved her very much. "Don't say that. I am willing to accompany him." Hui Yudi's voice suddenly became weak and inaudible. She didn't know why she suddenly had a feeling of a concubine meeting her legal wife at this time. Although she also knew that this thinking was very strange, she couldn't help thinking in this direction. She was even a little unable to extricate herself. The 2 talked for a few more words. In the end, she specially told Hui Yudi to take out her mobile phone to bask in the sun and charge it often. Only then did Han Jingjing hang up the phone and look at Laner next to her. They breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. "How is he?" At this time, Ning Xuefei suddenly woke up faintly. The first thing she said was to ask about Lin Yi's situation. "Feifei, don't worry. Big Brother Lin Yi is fine. He is recovering on his own, and Sister Hui Yudi is next to him. There will be no problem." Han Jingjing comforted her. "Really? That's good, that's good." Ning Xuefei's face finally regained some color. After pausing for a moment, she suddenly reacted and asked, "Hui Yudi is Deputy Dean Lu's disciple, right? She seems to have rarely left the East Continent. How did she know Lin Yi?" Han Jingjing pouted and said, "I also don't know about this. Haven't I been with you for the past 2 years, Feifei? As for what Big Brother Lin Yi has experienced, it was you guys who told me." "That's not right. Little junior brother hasn't been to the East Continent for the past 2 years. I haven't heard him mention any girls at all." Shengguan Lan'er had the most say in this regard. After thinking for a while, her eyes suddenly lit up and she said, "Jing Jing, do you remember that before the trial began, there was a girl with a veil who wanted to strike up a conversation with junior brother? Was that Hui Yudi?" "It can't be. Big Brother Lin Yi clearly rejected her at that time. She was rejected in public. As a girl, she can't possibly go and pester big brother Lin Yi, right? Han Jingjing shook her head. Who knows? Maybe something happened after she went in? Shanghai Laner said thoughtfully. No matter what, she sacrificed herself to stay with Lin Yi and never left him. We have to find a way to thank her. Although Ning Xuefei was weak at the moment when she said this, she had a kind of bearing. It seemed that she had unconsciously regarded herself as Lin Yi's woman. What are you thanking her for? Big sister Ho doesn't need us to thank her. If you really want to repay her, let little junior brother devote himself to her. Shanghai Laner sneered. Devote himself to her? Hearing this, Ning Xuefei and Han Jingjing were stunned. They were grateful, but they had never thought about this. You two are really stupid. Big sister Hua and little junior brother met by chance. If she didn't fall in love with little junior brother, why would she sacrifice herself to accompany him? She is a pure girl. If this kind of thing is spread out, her reputation will be ruined. Of course, only junior brother can be responsible for it. Shengguan Lan'er analyzed seriously. Ning Xuefei and Han Jingjing looked at each other and finally closed their mouths after a long time. This was a little unexpected. However, Shanghai Laner's analysis was not unreasonable. Otherwise, they really couldn't think of any other reasonable reasons. Feifei Jingjing, congratulations, you will soon have another sister. Shengguan Lan'er said with a mischievous smile. Chapter 4731. Shanghai Laner suddenly blushed and couldn't speak. She wanted to deny it, but she didn't know why she was reluctant. Although she had never thought about this, she would never agree to marry another man without Lin Yi. Is there a better man than little junior brother in this world? Shengguan Lan'er seriously doubted it. Like Ning Xuefei, who didn't want to marry other men, she didn't want to be separated from her best friends. At this moment she couldn't help but think shyly, my body has been seen by little junior brother. Does this mean that we're officially friends? Looking at Shanghai Laner's blushing face, Ning Xuefei and Han Jingjing suddenly laughed together. After all, they were all simple-minded girls. After such a scene, the previous gloomy clouds suddenly disappeared. The three women even began to discuss the problem of who was older and who was younger with great interest. On the other side, after Hui Yudi hung up the phone, she was not as carefree as the three of them. However, after listening to Han Jingjing's words of comfort, her heart finally felt a little more at ease. She no longer thought about it. She only wanted to protect Lin Yi by her side, looking forward to his gradual recovery. Lin Yi actually knew everything that Hui Yudi had done for him. Although he was seriously injured now, he couldn't even open his eyes, let alone speak. However, during the time when his injury was about to recover, he already had some consciousness. Feeling the gentle breath of Hui Yudi close at hand, Lin Yi was extremely moved at this moment. What Hui Yudi had done had far exceeded the kindness of temporary teammates. Let alone a union of interests, even good friends who had known each other for decades might not be able to do this for her. After all, Hui Yudi did this and she had sacrificed a lot. In order to accompany Lin Yi, she almost risked herself. She was simply risking her life to accompany him. She didn't even hesitate to risk her life, let alone a girl's reputation and integrity. Although Lin Yi was quite slow in the emotional aspect, he was not a fool. However, he wasn't a fool. At this moment, he finally understood that perhaps there were some unexplainable feelings between him and Hui Yudi. In fact, they both knew why Hui Yudi was willing to do this for him. After coming to Heavenly Island, Lin Yi didn't want to provoke more love debts. This was really unfair to his confidants. Unfortunately, he was a genius in other aspects. But in the emotional aspect, he was really slow to the point that people didn't know what to say. Every time it happened, it was the girl who took the initiative, and Lin Yi himself was an extremely soft-hearted person. Getting him to put down his pride and reject her face was harder than ascending to the heavens. Especially in this case, Hui Yudi was willing to give up her life and reputation for him. What else could he say? He was touched and helpless at the same time. He could only tell himself that in his heart. This time, no matter what, he couldn't let Hui Yudi down. She had done so much for him, and as a man, if he still hesitated and backed down, that would be too unreasonable. As for now, there was only one thing that Lin Yi had to do, and that was to work hard to recover. Although most of the trial takers had already left, there was still Scarface and the others. Hui Yudi alone couldn't stand firm in this trial ground. He had to recover as soon as possible so that he could rest easy. West Island Master Palace. In a side hall study, two women sat opposite each other. It was West Island Master Ning Shangling and East Continent Morning Pride Academy Deputy Dean Lu Ziyu. The study was the same as the boudoir, it was Ning Shangling's private place. Generally, outsiders couldn't come in, but Lu Ziyu and she were good friends who had known each other since childhood. Although there was a difference in strength, they weren't outsiders. "Shangling, do you know who that Linny is?" Lu Ziyu asked with a strange expression. She really couldn't imagine that her precious disciple would take the initiative to stay inside for a man she didn't know. At this moment, she felt an inexplicable emptiness in her heart, as if the flesh of her heart had been snatched away. This Linny is indeed a very rare talent. Among the younger generation of the 5 great heavenly islands that have recently risen up, he can be considered a rare outstanding talent. Ning Shangling smiled and said honestly, "To be honest with you, Ziyu, I actually think quite highly of this kid. He's one of the candidates that I'm interested in as Fei Fei's husband." "This kid is really that famous?" Lu Ziyu instantly revealed a surprised expression when she heard that. Who was Ning Shangling? She was the West Island master, a top-notch existence that could be counted on one's fingers even in the 5 great heavenly islands. With her level and status, ordinary so-called super geniuses wouldn't catch her eye at all. Even in a place like East State College where geniuses gathered, there were very few young disciples that Ning Shangling could remember, let alone get such a high evaluation from her. At least from what Lu Ziyu knew, this old friend of hers had never evaluated a young man like that. To be able to make her a candidate for her daughter's husband, he was equivalent to half an heir of the West Island in the future. Was this Linny really that amazing? He can't really be considered famous. In terms of fame, he's actually far inferior to Nakajima and the few from the East Continent. However, if you carefully understand what he's done, you'll know that he's extraordinary. Ning Shangling was rather emotional. Seeing that Lu Ziyu didn't seem to believe her, she smiled and gave an example. "You also know that the West Mountain Evil sect is a great threat to our West Island. All these years I've spent a lot of manpower and effort to monitor their every move. Among them there's a West Mountain Old Sect master. Do you still remember him? Of course he's a loser." Lu Ziyu sneered. She was a reliable ally that naturally stood on the West Island's side. Whenever the West Mountain Evil sect wanted to stir up trouble, she would rush over to help at the first instant. She had quite a few encounters with the top-notch experts of the West Mountain Evil sect, and among them was the West Mountain Old Sect master, who was ranked second among the evil cultivators. To you he's naturally a loser. But even at the level of the mountain opening period, this old thief's strength is still considered a rare troublesome existence, Ning Shangling said. This old thief is indeed not weak. Last time I even suffered a small loss at his hands, Lu Ziyu said angrily. Although she suffered a loss last time because someone caught her off guard and made the first move, this West Mountain Old Sect master was indeed not a kind person. Even if the two of them fought one-on-one fairly, to be honest, she didn't have much confidence that she could win. Chapter 4732. Kill who? Lu Ziyu was taken aback. Someone who could make West Mountain Old Sect, a big shot of evil cultivators, come out personally was definitely not an ordinary person. Most likely, it was only the top experts of those famous sections. It's Lin Yi. Ning Shangling smiled faintly. Linny? Ning Shangling was instantly shocked and couldn't help but be moved. Is that true? How did he offend West Mountain Old Sect? The reason is actually very simple. He killed an evil cultivator named Wu Baoyang. This person was the direct disciple of the West Mountain Sect's elder, and he was also his nephew. That's why this old thief was alerted, Ning Shangling explained. So that's how it is. No wonder the old thief was so angry. But with such a big shot evil cultivator at the opening of the mountain personally hunting him down, how could he still live until now? Could it be that there's some expert protecting him? Lu Ziyu couldn't help but ask curiously. Although she hadn't paid attention to Lin Yi before, since he could participate in the West Island trial, it meant that his strength was at most at the peak of the nascent soul stage. This strength was already extremely high for most cultivators, but in front of evil cultivators at the level of West Mountain Old Sect, he was no different from an ordinary person. He could be crushed to death with just a thought. If there wasn't an expert helping him, Lu Ziyu wouldn't believe that a mere nascent soul stage expert could survive under the hands of West Mountain Old Sect. It was simply a fantasy. There really isn't. It's not like you don't know about the South Continent Sea. Apart from the Spirit Beast clan, who can contend against the experts of West Mountain Old Sect. Ning Shangling laughed. That's true. The Spirit Beast clan secludes themselves from the world, and evil cultivators or not have nothing to do with them. They're not like the famous sects who would shout at an old thief like West Mountain Old Sect. If there's no personal enmity, Normally no one would take the initiative to deal with West Mountain Old Sect. Lu Ziyu nodded and then became interested. She asked curiously, but if that's the case, how did Lin Yi escape from West Mountain Old Sect? It's not quite possible with just his own words, right? When I first saw the tip-off, I actually also felt that it was incredible. But the fact is that Lin Yi survived from the hands of West Mountain Old Sect with his own strength. Ning Shangling sighed with emotion. How is this possible? Lu Ziyu was greatly astonished. At their level, there were very few things that could cause her to lose her composure. But a mere original infant stage cultivator was able to escape from the West Mountain Elders' pursuit. This was not only shocking, it was completely subverting their worldview. Apart from Lin Yi himself and Grandmaster Shishan, I'm afraid no one else knows the specific process. But according to my informant in West Island, one thing is certain. The reason why Lin Yi was able to escape death was that he escaped into the interior of the South Island, Ning Shangling said. He escaped to the South Island? No wonder West Mountain Old Sect didn't dare to chase after him. But for a nascent soul stage cultivator to be able to escape from the territory of the spiritual beasts unscathed, that's an unprecedented miracle. Lu Ziyu sighed from the bottom of her heart. She glanced at Ning Shangling and said, in that case this child is really extraordinary. It's not strange that you want to take him in as a son-in-law. If he can really grow up in the future, he might not be inferior to that one of yours. That's right, that's what I was thinking at first. But unfortunately, it looks like it's impossible now. But there's heaven's will in the unseen world. Fertile water should not flow to outsiders, so I'll give it to your precious disciple. Ning Shangling covered her mouth and laughed. He abducted my disciple and trapped him in the trial grounds. I haven't even settled the score with him. No matter how talented he is, I won't agree to let die, or go with him. Lu Ziyu snorted coldly with a face full of anger. Ziyu, don't be so harsh with your words. Maybe by the time the two of them come out of the trial ground, they'll already have a child. Ning Shangling, who had always been graceful and magnanimous, now had a rare hint of mischievous playfulness on her face. This. Lu Ziyu's expression immediately changed. She hesitated for a moment and then said, unable to put down her pride, that won't do either. No matter what, I won't hand die, or over to this kid whose background I don't know. Speaking of which, Lin Yi knows you very well, so it's not like you don't know anything about him. You still don't know, right? He's from the North Island's 3 great pavilions. He's a disciple that our old senior, Shanghai Tianhua, thinks highly of, Ning Shangling revealed with a smile. Is that true? Lu Ziyu was finally moved. Although she was shocked when she heard about Lin Yi's amazing deeds, she didn't have a good impression of him. But when she heard that Lin Yi was actually a subordinate of Shanghai Tianhua, this was a completely different matter. Both Lu Ziyu and Ning Shangling had hundreds of years of friendship with Shanghai Tianhua. Although Shanghai Tianhua was a senior because they had been teachers for a period of time, the closeness of their relationship was not something that could be explained clearly with just a few words. If Lin Yi was really a disciple that Shanghai Tianhua thought highly of, then no matter how reluctant she was, she couldn't possibly continue to refuse to let him go. Of course it's true. This time he's a special envoy from the North Island personally appointed by Shanghai Tianhua. Otherwise, why do you think I'd consider him? Ning Shangling shook her head and laughed. If one wanted to become Ning Shangling's husband, it wasn't enough to just be strong. The most important thing was to know his background. Only then could they ensure the stability of the West Island in the future. If that's really the case. Lu Ziyu's expression changed. She muttered to herself for a moment, then finally sighed and said, forget it. If it really doesn't work, I'll just wait here for a few years. Since he's a disciple that Big Brother Shangwan thinks highly of, he's a good match for Dai. I really can't say anything more. Ziyu, if you can really have Lin Yi as your son-in-law, it's your blessing. If it wasn't for the fact that I've already announced that only those who pass the trial can become my son-in-law, do you think I'd give him to you so easily? And you're still sighing here as if you've suffered a great loss. I really don't know what to say. Ning Shangling didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Lu Ziyu smiled a little awkwardly. Although there was nothing wrong with what she said, Huiyuti was, after all, the flesh of her heart. She had treated her like her own daughter since she was young. Now that she suddenly found out that the flesh of her heart was going to leave with someone else, she really didn't feel good. Most parents probably had this kind of mentality. As the two of them were talking, a disciple from the West Island suddenly came in to report. He said in an urgent tone, reporting to Island Lord, when I was registering the trial takers just now, I found a person named Kong Ming Ming digging up an immature thunder xuanwu, and he even dug it up by the roots. Chapter 4733. It was no exaggeration to say that Kong Ming Ming's behavior was no less than coming to the temporary imperial residence of the island owner to rob and smash the heirloom treasure of West Island. If the news got out, he would be infuriated by both humans and gods. It was no wonder that Ning Shangling was furious. This guy is so hateful. Lu Ziyu was also filled with righteous indignation. As an old friend of Ning Shangling for many years, she knew clearly what the Thunder Xian Rattan meant to West Island. She couldn't help but wonder, but how did Kong Ming Ming find the Thunder Xian Rattan? Such an important route map shouldn't be leaked, right? I also think it's very strange. We must investigate this matter carefully. Ning Shangling frowned and said. It was true that the existence of the Thunder Xian Rattan in West Island's trial was not a secret. In fact, many trial takers came for the Thunder Xian Rattan. But the specific location of the Thunder Xian Rattan was a top secret in West Island. Even among the inner disciples of West Island, only a few disciples who were valued by Ning Shangling would get a hint, and the others had no way to know. Even with the deep relationship between Lu Ziyu and Ning Shangling, it was only because Lu Ziyu had made great contributions to West Island that he revealed it to her, and it had never been spread before. Whether it was Lu Ziyu or those disciples valued by Ning Shangling, they were all absolutely reliable people. Normally, there was no reason for them to leak such an important secret. How did Kong Ming Ming know it? Could it be that this guy injured Dai and forced the information out of her? Lu Ziyu was suddenly alarmed. Ning Shangling also nodded thoughtfully. Most of the participants in the trial of West Island were outsiders, and there were not many local disciples in West Island. To prevent the secret of the Thunder Xian Rattan from being leaked, Ning Shangling didn't give them any hint this time. That was to say, among these people only Hui Yudi knew the location of the Thunder Xian Rattan. According to this inference, Kong Ming Ming was very likely to get the clue from Hui Yudi, and this thing could be combined with Lin Yi's injury. Lin Yi might be trying to save Hui Yudi. That was why he was severely injured by Kong Ming Ming, and it was also because of this that Hui Yudi did not hesitate to sacrifice her life and reputation to stay inside to accompany him. In just a short moment, Ning Shangling and Lu Ziyu had spontaneously formed a complete sequence of events. The more they thought about it, the more logical they felt it to be, almost certain that it was the truth. This Kong Ming Ming really deserves to die. Lu Ziyu said angrily through gritted teeth. Ning Shangling nodded with an ugly expression, not saying a word. She was far more infuriated than Lu Ziyu, but as the ruler of the Western Island, there was nothing she could do. After all, everything in the trial was up to fate, and it was common for people to kill others and seize their treasures. Moreover, there was no rule that she couldn't touch the Thunder Xian vine in advance. Even if she wanted to punish Kong Ming Ming, what reason did she have to take revenge afterwards? What Kong Ming Ming did was shameless, but if Ning Shangling really blamed him for it, the whole West Island would become the laughingstock of the world. It was related to the reputation of West Island, so she could only swallow it. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed, and there was still no news from Lin Yi and Hui Yudi. In fact, everyone knew that the two of them had been trapped inside and couldn't get out. The maximum time limit for a master at the peak of the nascent soul realm was 1 month, and a whole month and a half had passed. Just because the masters above the nascent soul realm couldn't activate the transmitting formation. Even immortals couldn't come out again. The trial in the Western Island was so noisy that it couldn't keep dragging on like this. After all, there had to be a final conclusion or it would be like breaking the promise. Although Ning Xuefei had pleaded with Ning Shangling several times these days, Shi Han Jingjing and Shanghai Laner all believed her. She asked her to try to delay it for a while, preferably until Lin Yi came back. Shi Han Jingjing and Shanghai Laner all believed it. As long as Lin Yi recovered, he would definitely find a way to get out. However, this kind of thing couldn't be decided by Ning Shangling alone. After all, this was a big event of the whole West Island, and all the sects of other Heaven Stage Islands were paying attention to it. No matter how much she spoiled her daughter, she couldn't make fun of the reputation of the whole West Island. Delaying it for half a month was the limit, and she really couldn't delay it any longer. Regarding this result, Ning Xuefei, who had just recovered a little from the blow of Lin Yi's serious injury, really wanted to cry but had no tears, because she already knew who was the destined winner this time. She hated this person very much and she wouldn't entrust her life to this kind of person even if she was beaten to death. But she had no choice. After all, this represented the credibility and face of the whole West Island, and she couldn't just say no to it. After half a month, in everyone's expectation, the island master's palace finally opened to the public again. All the trial takers who had participated in the West Island trial were invited to the side courtyard of the palace, in the courtyard of the transmission formation. Today, the final winner of the West Island trial would be publicly judged here. The reason why they didn't choose the more grand and formal square outside was mainly to take care of the trial takers. After all, these treasures would be taken away after the evaluation. As the saying went, one shouldn't show one's wealth. If they were placed in a public place outside, it was hard to guarantee that they wouldn't get into trouble later. Now they were placed in the relatively secret side courtyard of the island master's palace. Although this kind of thing couldn't be completely eliminated, it was better. The side courtyard was heavily guarded, and it was crowded with people. Not only a group of trial takers gathered here, but also the branch managers of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce, the Central Chamber of Commerce, the Wealthy Chamber of Commerce, and so on. As the most authoritative industry insiders, they were the important judges specially invited by West Island. After a brief opening speech, everyone soon got to the long-awaited topic. A group of West Island disciples took out the previous registration books and asked the trial takers to take them out one by one to compare in public, and a group of judges evaluated them on the spot. Only the one with the highest evaluation would have the last laugh. This was undoubtedly a treasure appraisal conference. Every time someone took out a rare treasure of heaven and earth, there would be a burst of whispers in the side courtyard. Many people knew that they couldn't compare with other trial takers, but this time they could see so many kinds of treasures of heaven and earth, which could be regarded as an eye-opener, and they didn't come in vain. Of course, there were also some trial takers who were very ambitious. Relying on the rare treasures of heaven and earth in their hands, they thought that this time they could have a chance to become Ning Shangling's son-in-law, and then they could have a meteoric rise. However, when it was Kong Ming Ming's turn, everything stopped abruptly. Thunder Xian Ratan. It turned out to be the legendary Thunder Xian Ratan. Chapter 4734. DSDX. The PP software for the novel has been developed. Please go to the bottom of the HPN website, and you can install the PP software for Android and Apple. This kind of treasure of heaven and earth didn't even need to be judged by experts. The value of the Thunder Mystic Vine was beyond doubt. Even if all the other treasures of heaven and earth on the scene were added together, they would not be as valuable as the Thunder Mystic Vine. Of course, the managers of the Chambers of Commerce and other experts had already seen that this Thunder Mystic Vine was not fully mature. But even if it was an immature Thunder Mystic Vine, it was still a Thunder Mystic Vine. After its value was discounted, it still dominated the scene. No other treasure of heaven and earth could compare with it. Even if it was an immature Thunder Mystic Vine, it could still be used to refine the Thunder Mystic Pill. Although its quality would definitely be affected, and it couldn't guarantee that it would pass the Thunder Tribulation, there was still a great chance. Judging from this point alone, it was still a rare treasure that could only be found but not sought. Looking at the complacent Kong Ming Ming, all the trial takers present suddenly became listless. At this time, no matter how unwilling they were, it was futile. The value of all the treasures of heaven and earth they had was not even a fraction of what he had. How could they compare with him? The trial takers were just shocked and frustrated, but the eyes of the disciples of the Western Island when they looked at Kong Ming Ming were full of undisguised anger. He had uprooted the Thunder Mystic Vine that belonged to the Western Island, and it was still an immature Thunder Mystic Vine. This meant that he had overdrawn the priceless treasure of the Western Islands trial in the future. In other words, this bastard had simply robbed the Thunder Mystic Vine that should have belonged to them, and he had done it in such a way that would cause the wrath of both men and gods. This was intolerable. If it weren't for Ning Shangling and Yen Xinlan restraining them, the disciples of the Western Island would have already rushed up and torn the bastard Kong Ming Ming into pieces. He had robbed the master's treasure and dared to show it off in the master's house. Who gave him such courage? Kong Ming Ming was completely unaware of this. At this moment he was full of excitement. While enjoying the shocked and envious gazes of the crowd, he looked at Ning Xuefei in the distance greedily. At the thought that such a delicate little beauty, who was also the noble princess of the Western Island, would soon be his, he couldn't help swallowing his saliva. West Island had made the right choice this time. Su Lingchong wasn't as stupid as Kong Xiaoming. He secretly poked Kong Xiaoming in the back. Kong Xiaoming shuddered when he noticed that the disciples of the Western Island looked like they were going to eat him alive. He was sweating profusely. He had unknowingly incurred the wrath of the crowd. But it was only in this kind of public place. If there were not so many outsiders present, these impatient disciples of the Western Island would really eat him alive. He had to be careful when he went back later, so as to avoid falling into a trap. But on second thought, Kong Ming suddenly felt amused. After today, he was destined to be the prince consort of the West Island. For these disciples of the West Island, he was the real master. They wouldn't dare to do anything to harm him even if they were 100 times braver. Worrying about this kind of thing was completely groundless. Not only that, if one day he was in a good mood, he could even casually find a few beauties in womanland. He could even take advantage of Ning Shangling, this noble and beautiful mother-in-law of his. Just thinking about it made him feel so good that he could fly. Seeing the greedy and complacent look on Kong Ming's face, the disciples of the Western Island became angrier and angrier. Even Ning Shangling, who had always been calm, couldn't help but frown. At the thought of making such a shameless guy her son-in-law, she suddenly felt as disgusted as if she had eaten a fly. Not only Ning Shangling the mother but also Yan Xinlan and Lu Ziyu who were next to her were furious when they saw this. They looked at each other tacitly, and killing intent flashed across their eyes. If Ning Shangling acquiesced, they didn't mind being killers in the dark. They had watched Ning Xuefei grow up since she was a child. No matter what, they couldn't watch Ning Xuefei jump into the fire pit. And they couldn't allow such a shameless guy like Kong Ming to be the prince consort of the West Island. Ning Shangling shook her head slightly. As Ning Xuefei's mother, she wanted to do this more than anyone else, but another more important identity didn't allow her to do so. Even if she didn't want Kong Ming to be the prince consort of the West Island, she couldn't use such a violent method that could easily lead to gossip. Everyone, it's almost time. Let's take a lunch break first, and the results will be announced in the afternoon, Ning Shangling announced with an indifferent look, and then took the lead to leave the field with Ning Xuefei. The crowd was left stunned. The other trial takers didn't care. Anyway, it was obvious that they had nothing to do with it. It didn't matter to them whether the results were announced now or in the afternoon. If they couldn't wait, they could leave now. However, Kong Ming's expression at the moment was really wonderful. He was complacent just now and even prepared to give his acceptance speech, but when he heard Ning Shangling's words, he almost bit his tongue off. Senior cultivators didn't even need to eat, drink, or go to the toilet during lunch break, and it was common knowledge that they didn't need to sleep or rest. Damn it, where did lunch break come from? For a moment, feeling the malicious eyes of the West Island disciples from all directions, Kong Ming was so scared that he almost peed his pants. His future mother-in-law deliberately left such a blank period of time. Could it be that she wanted to give these West Island disciples a chance to take advantage of it? Kong Ming was a schemer himself, so when he encountered this kind of thing, his mind was naturally full of conspiracy theories. Think about it, if they could kill him before the results were announced, then they could take back the Thunder Abstruse Vines justifiably, and the price that the West Island had to pay was just a scapegoat. It was a good deal no matter how he thought about it. At this moment, facing the envious eyes of the other trial takers, Kong Ming was sweating profusely, and even his legs were weak from fear. Why didn't Ning Shangling play by the rules? What should he do now? Seeing the other trial takers leave one after another, Kong Ming suddenly felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. He subconsciously prepared to run away, but was stopped by Su Lingchong. Kong Ming suggested nervously, "Child Su, the situation is not good. Why don't we run away now? Anyway, Linny can't come back. As long as we don't let him get involved with Ning Xuefei, we can take the Thunder Abstruse Vines back and complete the task, right?" "Don't panic." Su Lingchong snorted. Of course, he also knew that the situation was serious. They had dug up an immature Thunder Abstruse Vines from the roots, and they had greatly offended almost all the West Island disciples. Even if Ning Shangling didn't say anything, the people below might take the initiative to assassinate them. This kind of thing was impossible to guard against. But Kong Ming still wanted to run away. For him, the most dangerous period before the final results were announced, especially in this place where the West Island masters were everywhere. If someone was ruthless enough to launch a sneak attack on him, he wouldn't even know how he died. To be continued. This book is collected from a website. Please move to the pavilion. The chapters are clear and updated quickly. Chapter 4735. Idiot. It's precisely because these people harbor ill intentions towards us that we have to stay here even more. If we were to go out now, then they can just casually find a scapegoat to brush it off if something happens. But so long as we stay here, they will absolutely not dare to act rashly. Su Lingchong grunted coldly in a low voice. Ah. Kong Ming was stunned and then suddenly reacted. He said excitedly with his eyes shining, "Yes, Child Su is wise. This is the palace of the island owner, and I'm the winner of the trial by so many people. If something happens to me here, West Island will never get away with it. They won't dare to take such a risk no matter how bold they are. The most dangerous place is the safest place. That's the truth. As long as the result of the trial is announced, no one can hurt us. Su Lingchong sneered proudly. Yes, that's the truth. Kang Xiaoming suddenly became arrogant again. He looked at the West Island disciples around him with his head held high. Not only was he not afraid, but he also commented on their looks with great interest. They would all be his potential targets in the future. In the trial site, in a hidden corner not far from the transmission array, Hui Yudi still stayed by Lin Yi's side. Although Lin Yi still had no sign of waking up, Hui Yudi was not as worried and hesitant as she was at the beginning. She looked quite calm and sure. There was no other reason. She had seen every change of Lin Yi these days. Except that he didn't wake up, everything else was getting better quickly. Not only his breath and pulse became stronger, but what was more amazing was that the shocking wound on Lin Yi's abdomen was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye, even though it had not been treated effectively. Now it was about to be healed. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, Hui Yudi would never believe that there was such a magical thing in the world. After suffering such a fatal injury, he not only didn't die, but also could survive without the help of a miracle-working doctor. It was more than beyond common sense to heal himself completely by his own vitality. It was a miracle. Lin Yi was really an extraordinary person. Hui Yudi confirmed this recognition again. Seeing that Lin Yi's breath was as steady as usual, she smiled softly and then got up and walked out of the hidden corner. He went outside under the sun and took out his phone to charge. Apart from rainy days, this was what she had to do every day for the past half a month. Han Jingjing had specifically told her to charge it frequently. After all, this was the only way they could communicate with each other. If it was broken, it would be troublesome. Fortunately, this training ground rarely saw rain all year round, although it was always shrouded in a layer of blood. However, as long as they reached an open space, charging would not be a problem. As usual, Hui Yudi came to the open space outside the teleportation array. There were valleys on both sides and she could only bask in the sun at noon. However, before she could put down her phone, she suddenly saw a shadow flashing in the corner of her eyes. Who? Hui Yudi was frightened. However, after looking around, she didn't see anyone. Instead, the wind was quite strong and the sound of it was whistling. It was just a false alarm. Hui Yudi heaved a sigh of relief. Now that Lin Yi was unconscious, she could only rely on herself. To be honest, she really felt a little uneasy. Although she was a nascent soul-perfected expert, she was still a weak girl. Moreover, her strength was not invincible in this place, and there was still Scarface and his gang. As usual, after charging the phone, Hui Yudi put away her phone and returned to her hiding place to take care of Lin Yi. However, before she could sit down, there was a sudden sound of messy footsteps. Then she saw a man with a domineering aura. He brought a group of ferocious-looking subordinates with him. It was Scarface and his gang. It's you? Hui Yudi turned pale with fright. She hurriedly stood in front of the unconscious Lin Yi and looked at Scarface with fear and caution. This guy obviously didn't come with good intentions. Oh, it's really here. Scarface looked at Hui Yudi from head to toe, drooling. His eyes shone brightly as he swallowed his saliva. It seemed like he wanted to pounce on her. Previously, when he saw Hui Yudi, she was wearing a veil. Therefore, he only knew that this girl had an alluring figure. As for what her face looked like, he didn't know. Therefore, even if Scarface had some thoughts, he wouldn't be too impulsive. After all, in this day and age, looking at someone's back would make people commit a crime. Looking at someone's face would make people defend themselves. In fact, there were many girls in the Heaven Stage Island. But now, because there was no one around, Hui Yudi had already taken off her veil. Her delicate and alluring face was unreservedly displayed in front of everyone. Coupled with her seductive figure, if Scarface and his gang didn't have any thoughts of committing a crime at this time, it could only mean that they weren't men. Looking at their obscene expressions, Hui Yudi's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. She secretly regretted that she was too careless. The figure she had glimpsed from the corner of her eyes was not an illusion at all. It was a spy of Scarface and his gang. Only in this way could she explain why these people suddenly appeared here. Hui Yudi didn't guess wrong. It was the truth. Every year after the West Island trial ended, the scar-faced man would always bring people to the exit to patrol. This was his usual practice because according to past experience, there would always be a few unlucky challengers at this time of the year who never gave up, making their last struggle here. Of course, this was wishful thinking. After a month, no one could go out. They could only have a chance when the next trial began. As the local emperor, Scarface knew this better than anyone else. And according to his experience, after about a month and a half, these unlucky guys who were making their last struggle would give up one after another. This was the best time for him to come out and recruit his underlings. That was why he sent his men to check out the situation. He didn't expect to accidentally find a beauty like Hui Yudi. Looking at Hui Yudi's charming and attractive appearance, Scarface couldn't help but start howling like a wolf. Although he still had some fear in his heart because of Lin Yi's slap, Lin Yi was still lying there and couldn't move. He was a master at the peak of the early stage of mysterious ascension. How could he be scared by a half-dead person? As for Hui Yudi herself, Scarface had learned his lesson from Su Lingchong. Although he was afraid that this chick's strength was not to be underestimated, he was still captivated by her beauty. He was a man who had held back for decades. Now that he had suddenly seen such a beauty, he would not be Scarface but the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. After a few days, I will show everyone Murloc's account. This is a new gift pack benefit that Murloc has made for everyone. Enter the following activation code in the game to receive it. Eat Deduk. Chapter 4736. What do you want? Hui Yudi pretended to be calm as she furrowed her brows. She was extremely anxious in her heart. Because this was a place she had specially found for Lin Yi, there was only one exit, but it was completely blocked by Scarface and his men. There was no way to escape, so the only way was to brace herself and scare Scarface away. Nothing much. I just heard from my subordinates that you were still here, so I came over to see if there was anything I could help you with. Scarface smiled. Due to his last bit of fear, he didn't want to force himself on her. If he could make this girl lower her head, that would be for the best. No need. I advise you to quickly take these people away. Otherwise, if they disturb my peace, don't blame me for being impolite. Hui Yudi pretended to be strong as she coldly snorted. Is that so? So the young lady wanted peace and quiet? That's good, but this place is really too lousy. It can't block the wind or the rain. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't seem to have anything to do with peace. Scarface pinched his chin as he laughed. Hui Yudi looked at him coldly and didn't say anything. She didn't know what this guy was planning. The difference in strength between her and the enemy was too great. Unless it was absolutely necessary, she couldn't shed all pretense of cordiality and could only feign civility. Looking at the entire training grounds, I'm afraid that the only place that is quiet is my place. If you don't mind, why don't you come to my place to stay? Scarface suggested maliciously. No need, I'm fine staying here. You guys can go. Hui Yudi immediately refused. Miss, as the saying goes, you rely on your parents at home, and when you go out, you rely on your friends. We met by chance and this is called fate. I'm sincerely inviting you. Don't you think you're not giving me any face? Scarface's expression changed. Then what do you want? Hui Yudi was shocked. If the other party turned hostile, then today would be really dangerous. I don't want anything. I just want you to stay at my place for a while and accompany me while you're at it. I feel that we can cultivate our relationship. Only then did Scarface reveal his fox tail. With a face full of saliva, he chuckled and said, After all, we're all trapped in this godforsaken place and can't get out. Life has to go on. You're such a beautiful woman, you can't always be a widow with this half-dead guy. What do you say, young lady? Dream on. Hui Yudi's expression immediately turned as cold as ice. It was fine to feign civility, but since the other party had spoken to such an extent, she could not tolerate it. Little girl, let me give you a word of advice. It's best not to say things so ruthlessly. As long as you accompany me for a few days, I guarantee that no one here will dare to touch even a single hair on your head. This is good for both of us, but if you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, then don't blame me for not having tender, protective feelings for the fairer sex. A stern look flashed across Knife Scar's face. Hui Yudi was so angry that she gritted her teeth. If it wasn't for the fact that Lin Yi was behind her, she would have made a move already. Even if she had to die, she wouldn't let him have his way. I'm still being polite to you. You'd better accept it. Otherwise, when I'm not polite, then... Scarface said as he spoke. With a lewd smile on his face, he reached out to touch Hui Yudi's body. What if I'm not polite? Following the indifferent voice, a hand suddenly grabbed onto Scarface's perverted claw. No matter how hard he tried, it wouldn't budge. Looking at the owner of this hand, everyone gasped in unison. Without saying a word, they scattered like birds and beasts. Hui Yudi's eyes flickered with disbelief. She covered her small mouth with her hands, and was so excited that she couldn't say a word for a long time. Thump. Scarface was so scared that his legs went soft. A dignified early-stage mysterious ascending expert knelt down on the spot. Looking at his current expression, he was practically scared out of his wits. Even if you beat him to death, he wouldn't have expected it. Lin Yi, who had suffered such a terrifying injury to his abdomen, actually woke up at this time. Furthermore, he felt that his aura seemed to have become even stronger than before. Previously, this ruthless person could send him flying with a casual slap. If he wanted to kill him now, wouldn't it be easier than killing an ant? His feeling was really not wrong. As the saying goes, one who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune. After Lin Yi had been unconscious for so many days, his strength had unknowingly risen to the middle stage of nascent soul. At this time he had just woken up, so he hadn't fully grasped his strength yet. That was why Scarface could feel it. "You haven't answered me yet. What will happen if I'm not polite?" Lin Yi looked at Scarface, who was trembling in fear as he knelt in front of him. His tone carried a faint killing intent. No, nothing much. I just have a cheap mouth," Scarface said as he slapped himself twice in the face. With a sullen face he begged, "Senior, please spare me. I really just have a cheap mouth. I really don't mean anything else." "Then why did you come here?" Lin Yi curled his lips noncommittally. "Oh, I'm here to send Senior off." Yes. "I reckon that Senior is about to get bored of staying here, so I came to send you off." Scarface suddenly had an idea. "Is that so? Then why did I vaguely hear that you seem to want her to sleep with you?" The killing intent on Lin Yi's body became more and more intense. No, this is really a huge misunderstanding." Scarface was immediately scared to the point of peeing his pants. He was afraid that he would be crushed to death by Lin Yi in the next moment. He hurriedly came up with an idea and said, "Senior, I really didn't say to sleep. I said to let your wife go back with me to choose some good things as a farewell gift for you. It can also be considered a small token of my appreciation." "Really?" Lin Yi turned his head to look at Hui Yudi. He held her hand and winked mischievously. At this moment, Hui Yudi was still immersed in the sudden pleasant surprise. When she felt Lin Yi hold her hand, she suddenly reacted. Her charming face immediately flushed red. Her cheeks were like burning clouds, and the redness had already reached her ears. She didn't hear a single word that was said clearly. However, she heard the sensitive word wife. Seeing that Lin Yi didn't have any intention of correcting her, especially when he took the initiative to hold her hand, did this mean that he had tacitly agreed? But he wasn't even ready yet. Wasn't this development a little too fast? How was she going to explain this to Master? Hui Yudi's mind was filled with random thoughts. She only managed to recover when Lin Yi asked for the second time. After understanding Lin Yi's meaning, she tilted her head and said, "It seems so. Then why don't we go and choose some?" Chapter 47-37. Yes, I'll lead the way. Scarface finally let out a sigh of relief. He had taken a big turn at the gates of hell, but today he really got his life back. Looking at Scarface's sorry figure, Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. He turned his head and looked deeply at Hui Yudi. He squeezed her hand tightly and said, "You've worked hard these days, I'll remember it in my heart." He had never been a man who knew how to say sweet words. No matter how touched he was, he would only say plain and simple words. However, every word came from the bottom of his heart. "Not at all. It's what I should do." Hui Yudi blushed and lowered her head. "What you should do? A temporary teammate has such a big responsibility?" Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. "No, like that." Hui Yudi stuttered for a long time. No matter what, this matter had already exceeded the boundaries of being a temporary teammate. However, as a girl, she couldn't just directly admit it and say that she inexplicably wanted to stay with him for the rest of her life, right? Lin Yi laughed. Seeing this, he no longer teased her. He immediately grabbed Hui Yudi's hand and directly caught up to Scarface. If he didn't keep a close eye on him, this guy might find a way to escape midway. As Lin Yi expected, Scarface really did have this idea. Although he knew that he couldn't be Lin Yi's opponent if he let go midway, he could just find a random corner to hide in. Lin Yi wouldn't even think about finding him again. After all, in terms of familiarity with the trial grounds, no one in the world could surpass him. Unfortunately, seeing Lin Yi casually catch up with him, Scarface's extravagant hopes were immediately shattered. His heart was filled with shock and fear. He didn't dare to have any thoughts of playing tricks and could only obediently do as Lin Yi said. The three of them were extremely fast. Along the way they were basically rushing at Scarface's top speed. As a peak early-stage mysterious ascended expert, even if he wasn't good at speed, his top speed was definitely not slow. In just an hour they arrived at the entrance of the 10,000-year Grand Canyon. What are you standing there for? Where was the promised gift? Hurry up and take it out. Do you want me to do it myself? Linny frowned and glanced at Scarface. Scarface was so frightened that he trembled. Trembling with fear, he quickly took out the treasures that he had accumulated over the years. Although his heart ached for these treasures, compared to his life, these treasures were nothing. If the treasures were gone, he could still bring people to continue searching for them. But if he lost his life, then he would lose everything. Looking at the various heavenly treasures piled up into a small mountain in front of him, Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. Hui Yuti's eyes couldn't help but shine brightly. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but nod his head in agreement. Damn it, the Mountain King profession really had a bright future ahead of him. Previously, he really couldn't tell that Scarface was actually a tycoon. You pick first. Lin Yi smiled at Hui Yuti, and Hui Yuti immediately pounced on him. She wouldn't be courteous to someone like Scarface, and with her experience, it was rare for her to make a mistake when it came to truly good things. After going one round, she picked 4 or 5 items. Every one of them was an extremely rare heaven and earth treasure. Scarface's heart was bleeding as he watched from the side. If it wasn't for the fact that Lin Yi's prestige was too great, he wouldn't have been able to resist it. At this moment he couldn't help but want to risk his life. The items that Hui Yuti had picked were all his special treasures. Apart from the legendary Thunder Mystic Vine, they were the most valuable in the entire training ground. In the entire trial ground they were the most valuable. He had spent dozens of years to collect these few, but in the end, all of them were taken by this little girl, leaving not a single one for him. Scarface wanted to slap himself 14,000 times on the spot. Fuck, it was all because of his cheap mouth. Why did he have to say that he was giving gifts? Even if he wanted to give gifts, he should have found a chance to secretly hide these items. Now, everything was exposed to Lin Yi and Hui Yuhao. This was practically sending a sheep into a tiger's mouth. But fortunately, these two people could only take 8 or 10 items at most. No matter how many items they had, they wouldn't be able to take them away. The other slightly inferior heaven and earth treasures could still be left. This time he would just treat it as him spending money to avoid disaster. Helplessly, Scarface could only comfort himself like this. After waiting for Hui Yuti to finish picking, this little girl was still pouting. If it wasn't for the fact that her backpack was almost broken, she would have taken a few more. In any case, this was a rare opportunity, so it would be a waste not to take it. You won't blame us for taking so many gifts from you, right? Lin Yi looked at Hui Yuti's expression and couldn't help but laugh. He turned his head and glanced at the grimacing Scarface. No, how could that be possible? Scarface hurriedly smiled and shook his head. He forced a smile and said, Senior, it is my honor that you have taken a liking to these items. The more you take, the more you think highly of me. I can't be happier. If you want to take all of them, it's fine. Really? Lin Yi looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. Really, it's even truer than real gold. I'm definitely speaking from the bottom of my heart. Scarface patted his chest as he spoke. He wasn't puffing himself up to look impressive, but he was already numb to it. Since the few treasures that he had kept as his trump cards had already been plundered by Hui Yuti, even if 5 or 6 more treasures were taken from him, it wouldn't hurt at all. Oh, since it's so difficult to refuse, then I'll respectfully accept. I'll take them all away. Lin Yi was instantly delighted. He had seen warm and hospitable people, but he had never seen such a warm and hospitable person. Being friends with a tycoon like Scarface was indeed satisfying. Yes. Scarface was still subconsciously echoing. After a moment he reacted. The dignified Mountain King at the peak of the early stage of the profound ascension realm looked like he was about to cry. He stammered, What? Senior? You're not joking, are you? No, I'm a very honest person. I usually don't joke with people. Lin Yi nodded solemnly. No. I mean, with so many things, are you sure you can take them away? The scar-faced man asked cautiously. This was the place he had accumulated over the past few decades. All sorts of heavenly materials and earthly treasures had been piled up into a small mountain. Although the other party was powerful, to say that he could take away all of them was nonsense. Oh, you don't have to worry about this. Carrying things is my strength. Lin Yi smiled faintly. With a wave of his hand, the heavenly and earthly treasures that had piled up like a small mountain in front of him instantly disappeared into thin air. Not a single one was left. Dong. Scarface knelt on the ground on the spot. His expression was one of shock and blood. He was dumbfounded for a long time and couldn't say a word. He felt his eyes go black and his life was in darkness. Chapter 4738. Looking at the backs of the two leaving, Scarface collapsed to the ground with a thud. He muttered the same sentence over and over again, "My baby. My baby." 2 hours later, Lin Yi and Hui Yudi returned to the exit of the teleportation array. Hui Yudi was still laughing. She had been laughing the whole way. She was happy whenever she thought of Scarface's last expression. "Yi, are you done? He suffered such a huge blow. As a girl, can you at least have some sympathy?" Lin Yi was a little speechless. "You're still talking about it? It's all because of you. I think Scarface is so depressed that he wants to commit suicide. How pitiful, he. Hui Yudi laughed as she spoke. She really didn't think that Lin Yi would be so strange. He directly took away all of Scarface's savings. Anyone would jump off a building in such a situation. This is called spending money to avoid disaster. It's already very good for him. Otherwise, do you think I would let him go so easily?" Lin Yi smiled indifferently. Although Scarface didn't have time to attack him and Hui Yudi, and didn't cause any substantial harm, Lin Yi could clearly sense what this guy had done. It was only because he was in a good mood that he was able to keep his life. Otherwise, if it were any other time, Lin Yi might have killed him directly. Looking at his despairing look, "I'm afraid he might as well die." Hui Yudi covered her mouth and laughed lightly. As they spoke, the two of them arrived at the exit of the teleportation array. She, who was originally in a good mood, suddenly frowned. She looked at Lin Yi helplessly and said, "What do we do now? We definitely can't get out of here. It seems like we can only wait until the next trial starts." "Are the restrictions of this teleportation array really so strict?" Lin Yi also frowned. If it wasn't for Ning Xuefei, being trapped here wouldn't be a big problem. At worst, he could just treat it as a closed-door training. But now that it was related to Ning Xuefei's marriage, they had to quickly think of a way to get out. "It should be. When you were unconscious, I asked the two West Island guards for advice, and they told me very clearly. Even the strongest attack of a nascent soul stage cultivator could only barely activate the teleportation after a month. Moreover, they would have to use all of their strength to activate the teleportation. But now it has already been a month and a half." Hui Yudi sighed. If it weren't for such a long time, with Lin Yi's strength far beyond the peak of Yuanying realm, she believed that he could give it a try. Maybe he could really break the limit of 1 month. But now an entire month and a half had passed. It was impossible no matter how he thought about it. "If that's the case, why didn't you try to open it once, throw me out, and then teleport yourself again?" Lin Yi couldn't help but ask. "That's what I thought, and I even specifically asked the two West Island guards about it. They said that it might not work, and with your condition at that time, it was very difficult for you to withstand the high load of the teleportation process. I was afraid that something would happen to you. So I didn't dare to try." Hui Yudi shook her head and added, "Furthermore, even with my strength at the peak nascent soul stage, it's impossible for me to continuously unleash my strongest attack in a short period of time. I can't hold back at all." "So that's how it is." Lin Yi nodded in realization. He could continuously activate the strongest killing move, so he subconsciously took it for granted that others were also such freaks. Strictly speaking, continuously activating the strongest killing move, this in itself was already an extremely heaven-defying ability. It was simply impossible for ordinary people to do it. This was not just a matter of talent. If it could become the strongest killing move, it would inevitably consume a lot of true chi. Many people would even consume all their true chi in one move. Lin Yi also relied on the jade pendant to replenish his true chi, so he could be so unscrupulous and casual. If it was a cultivator like Hui Yudi, she wouldn't be able to recover without a few months. By that time, the daylilies would have already rotted away. At that time, I really wanted to take a risk and try it. Maybe I could really send you out, but I definitely couldn't go out that way. I was afraid that even if you could successfully survive the teleportation, you would be targeted by Kai Zi and his accomplices when you reached the other side. I thought for a long time before giving up this idea." Hui Yudi said. "So it can really be done like this. If I activate it outside the teleportation array, there is a chance that I can send you out?" Lin Yi's eyes lit up when he heard this. He just casually asked. He never thought that there was really such a possibility. After all, according to what Yan Xinlan said before the trial began, to activate the teleportation array, one must channel true chi from the inside to attack the teleportation array. The people outside couldn't attack at all. Lin Yi thought that this was a dead rule. He didn't expect that it was not completely the case. It seems to be possible. When I asked the two West Island guards, they didn't completely deny it. They just said that it was very difficult. Hui Yudi tried hard to recall. "Then you enter the teleportation array first. I will try it outside. If I can succeed, you can go out." Lin Yi immediately decided. You can open it? Hui Yudi was shocked. She had already given up the idea of going out. She never thought that Lin Yi would have the confidence to try it at this time. I don't dare to guarantee it, but it's not illegal to try. Anyway, I'm idle here. If it doesn't work, I'll think of other ways. Lin Yi didn't take it seriously and smiled. According to his speculation, this trial teleportation array would recognize the strength of the teleportation target. However, the final driving force used for teleportation was still the powerful true chi absorbed by the array eye. In other words, even after a month, as long as the true chi produced was enough to be converted into the driving force for teleportation, then the teleportation array would be activated. After all, that 1-month deadline was only set for ordinary nascent soul stage cultivators who could activate the extreme power of true chi. It definitely didn't include him, Lin Yi. Of course, this was only a guess of Lin Yi's. Whether or not he could succeed still depended on the result of the attempt. As long as this theory was established, Lin Yi believed that the two of them should be able to leave smoothly. Because the power of the move he activated was far above that of ordinary nascent soul stage cultivators. Although a month and a half had passed, there was still a possibility of success. Oh, alright then. Seeing that Lin Yi was so excited, although Hui Yudi felt that it was impossible, she still obediently walked into the teleportation array. Chapter 4739. If there were no special moves, ordinary cultivators would not be able to attack it from the outside. However, this obstacle was naturally not difficult for Lin Yi. If he only wanted to attack the array eye inside, he had at least 5 ways. But now that he needed to use the strongest martial arts, Lin Yi undoubtedly chose the 5 elements murderous aura. With a soul-stirring low dragon roar, a 5 elements murderous aura rushed out of Lin Yi's palm. Although the speed was extremely fast and overbearing, it gave people the feeling that it was like a real dragon floating. As long as Lin Yi thought about it, it could easily change direction at any time. Not surprisingly, the 5 elements murderous aura hit the teleportation array eye without any suspense. Then, under the extremely surprised eyes of Hui Yudi, the entire teleportation array suddenly glowed with a dazzling white light, and it was actually activated. Seeing Hui Yudi's figure disappear in the teleportation array, Lin Yi suddenly felt relieved. Just now, he only used 50% of his true chi and he was able to send Hui Yudi away smoothly. It could be seen that even if the theory he had imagined was not completely correct, it should be close to it. His previous guess was right. The reason why the West Island officials stated that 1 month was the teleportation limit was that the attack limit of a Yuanying stage master could only reach this step. But Lin Yi was different. His real strength was now comparable to a real master of the profound ascending stage, and the power of his martial arts was far from comparable to other masters of the Yuanying stage. Not only that, Lin Yi was only a master of the middle stage Yuanying stage on the surface. The true chi he urged was also the true chi of the Yuanying stage, but the power was amazing, so it was not limited by the level of the teleportation array. Otherwise, if it was a master of the profound ascending stage, the teleportation array might not be able to bear the true chi of the profound ascending stage. Naturally, there was no way to send people out like Lin Yi. Perhaps this was the real trick. It was like a ferry wanting to cross a 100-mile river with high wind and waves. The ferry had to have enough power, or else it would be impossible to reach the other side. At the same time, the passengers on the ferry could not exceed the load of the ferry itself, or else they would not even be qualified to board the ferry, let alone cross the river. Ordinary Yuanying stage masters can't provide such a strong force, and as for the masters of the profound ascending stage, although they have this power, they are seriously overweight and can't board the ship. Only a freak like Lin Yi, the weight of a Yuanying stage master, has the power of a profound ascending stage master. Only then could he succeed in forcing his way through. Without hesitation, Lin Yi immediately approached the teleportation formation, and another 5 elements murderous aura activated the teleportation. In the afternoon, after experiencing a torturous wait that felt like a year, Kang Mingming and Su Lingchong finally got through the daunting experience without mishap, and they successfully waited until the moment when the trial results would be announced. In the side courtyard of the palace, a group of judges and trial takers gathered once again. When they saw Ning Shangling and Ning Xuefei reappear in front of everyone, the corners of Kang Mingming's mouth curled up. Looking at Ning Xuefei, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. From now on, this little beauty will belong to him. Seeing Kang Mingming's undisguised perverted expression, Ning Xuefei couldn't help but feel nauseous. She looked helplessly at Ning Shangling in front of her, hoping that her mother could help her get rid of this shameless bastard. Unfortunately, in the face of her daughter's request for help, Ning Shangling had no response. As the master of West Island. On this occasion, no matter how much she cared about Ning Shuefei, it was impossible for her to say anything in public. In fact, even if she had arranged any backup plan, it was impossible to let Ning Shuefei know that these dirty things were enough for her as a mother. Now it was not Ning Shuefei's turn to bear the burden. However, she didn't know that the innocent and kind daughter in Ning Shangling's eyes had secretly made up her mind at this moment. If she really let Kang Ming, this shameless bastard, succeed today, then she would follow the example of Shanghai Laner's small curly bear and find a chance to kill Kang Ming, so that he and Su Lingchong could sympathize with each other. Kang Ming was totally unaware of this. He was still immersed in the dream of ruling the harem of West Island. If Su Lingchong hadn't reminded him from time to time, he would have laughed like a fool. Thank you, judges. All the results of the trial takers have been accurately measured. I believe it is fair and objective enough. I will announce the final result now. Ning Shangling glanced at the audience and announced slowly. Before she finished speaking, everyone's eyes had automatically focused on Kang Ming. Everyone knew that this guy must be the winner who had the last laugh. There was no doubt about it. However, at this moment, a commotion suddenly came from the direction of the teleportation portal not far away. Everyone turned to look, only to find that two people had suddenly appeared at the teleportation portal's exit. In an instant, everyone present was dumbfounded. Hey, everyone is here. It seems that we are not late. How lucky we are. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Lin Yi smiled faintly as he walked towards them. Hui Yudi followed behind him with a light smile. This time it had been delayed for half a month. Lin Yi thought that the result had already been settled, and things would be a little tricky to deal with. However, he didn't expect that Ning Shangling had also delayed for half a month, and he and Hui Yudi happened to catch up. This was really a coincidence. Lin Yi. Ning Shuefei's eyes instantly lit up. Han Jingjing and Shangguan Laner, who were by her side, had already shouted for Lin Yi and little junior brother while cheering and jumping as they rushed over. If not for her mother blocking in front of her, Ning Shuefei would probably have rushed over even faster than the two of them. However, she could only wave desperately from afar. Lin Yi chuckled as he responded to the girls. Meanwhile, Hui Yudi, who was behind him, couldn't wait to run over to Lu Ziyu's side. Lu Ziyu had been very worried for her during this period of time. She had clearly become a little haggard, and looking at her made her heart ache. Brother Ling. You're fine. I knew you wouldn't die so easily. Qi Wenhan laughed loudly at the side. He came forward with Xia Luoluo and gave Lin Yi a fierce bear hug. In this half a month he had really been on tenterhooks. Every day he didn't know the taste of his food and couldn't sleep at night. He had lost a lot of weight, and even his originally masculine aura had become a little shallow. Sorry to have made you guys worry. Lin Yi was touched. If they weren't brothers who had gone through thick and thin with each other, why would they be so worried for him? Qi Wenhan had not been a brother for nothing. Chapter 4740. This disciple from the North Island, are you questioning the impartiality of our West Island? Yan Xinlan immediately stared at Kang Ming with anger and murderous intent in her eyes. This guy not only dug up the Thunder Shen vine, but also dared to question West Island in public for opening the back door for Lin Yi. In her eyes it was a deliberate provocation. Did he really think that West Island didn't kill people? No, I just feel strange. Otherwise, how can we explain this guy's sudden appearance? Is that right? Kang Ming was shocked when he saw this, and quickly pulled the other people present to be his shield. After all, everyone like him, was curious about how Lin Yi and Hui Yudi could suddenly appear. In fact, not only these people at this time, even Ning Shangling, Yan Xinlan, and the other high-level members of West Island also felt that it was incredible. After a whole month and a half they could still be transmitted out. This was something that had never happened before. This was the first time, which was simply unprecedented. Oh, it seems that you're really curious about this. Then I'll be merciful and tell you that it was the master of the profound ascending stage who sent us out. Lin Yi smiled lightly. What? Impossible. If he can send you out, why didn't he come out himself? Kang Ming's brain worked very fast this time, and he immediately found a flaw. Everyone else was also confused, especially Ning Shangling and others. They were familiar with the operation of the teleportation formation, and they knew that it was impossible for a master of the profound ascending stage to start the teleportation formation. They had tried many times before, but they had never succeeded. Then you can ask him. That guy has been trapped in there for so many years. Who knows what he has learned? There are so many weird people these days. Lin Yi made up irresponsibly. He didn't want others to doubt him, so he simply made up his mind. Anyway, no one could ask the scarred man for confirmation now. Whatever he said, it was useless even if he doubted it. Huiyuti giggled when she heard this. However, she immediately tightened her expression. Since Lin Yi didn't want others to know, then she could only accompany him to keep it a secret until the end of time. Everyone looked at each other when they heard this. Scarface and the other trial takers had all seen this before. How could such a greedy and cruel mountain king be so kind as to send someone out for no reason? However, no matter how much they didn't believe it, there was nothing they could do. Just as Lin Yi thought, there was no way to verify this matter. As long as Huiyuti did not expose him, he could only allow Lin Yi to spout nonsense, and in the end, it would become a meaningless case without a lead. Kang Ming looked at Lin Yi and snorted coldly. He said arrogantly, "It doesn't matter. You can't pose any threat to me anyway. I'll show you the moment of my final victory." Oh. Lin Yi smiled nonchalantly, too lazy to deal with the guy. He turned to Ning Shangling and asked, "I'm sorry, but I didn't say anything. Where can I register the spoils?" Ning Shangling smiled slightly and nodded to the disciple of West Island who was in charge of this matter. Immediately, a judge came over and appraised Lin Yi in public. The result is already obvious. What good treasure can this guy who can't even save his life take out? It's really a waste of everyone's time. Kang Ming sneered on the side. Most of the others had the same idea. However, when they saw clearly what Lin Yi took out, the whole audience suddenly boiled. Thunder Xian Ratan, it was Thunder Xian Ratan again. Ning Shangling, Yen Xinlan and other high-level officials of West Island couldn't help but feel their eyelids twitch. A Thunder Xian Ratan was dug out by Kang Ming before. That was enough to make them angry. They didn't expect that Lin Yi would take out another one now. How could other disciples of West Island survive? However, when they carefully looked at the Thunder Xian Ratan that Lin Yi took out, the eyes of the high-level officials of West Island suddenly became much kinder. This was a mature Thunder Xian Ratan, and it was not uprooted. That was to say, this was completely reasonable and it was totally different from the one Kang Ming had. Kang Ming suddenly stared at it and he couldn't say a word. He could only turn his head and look at Su Lingchong next to him. How could this pretentious guy have a Thunder Xian Ratan, and it's a mature Thunder Xian Ratan? Su Lingchong also shook his head incredulously. When they went in, there was no mature Thunder Xian Ratan, and there was no place for Lin Yi and Huiyuti to hide it at that time. How did it come about? The whole audience was in an uproar. Before, Kang Ming was undoubtedly the first with an immature Thunder Xian Ratan. Unexpectedly, a mature Thunder Xian Ratan popped out and stepped on Kang Ming. This scene was so dramatic that it seemed to have been discussed. It's impossible. How could it be possible? Where did you get it? Kang Ming stared blankly, and his expression showed that he was about to go crazy. His dream of the harem in West Island was about to come true, but it was suddenly stepped on and smashed into pieces. In particular, the other party was Lin Yi, his sworn enemy. Anyone would go crazy. Oh, it was also given to me by the master of the mysterious ascension stage. He is actually a very good man. Lin Yi's irresponsible answer immediately made the audience's eyes fall to the ground. This. Kang Ming was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes turned black and he almost passed out on the spot. The higher one climbed, the harder he fell. At this moment, it was a true portrayal of him. While Lin Yi shocked the audience, Huiyuti didn't need to win the final victory like him, but she still had to go through the motions. She casually took out 2 treasures of heaven and earth that she extorted from the scarred man, and she could easily deal with it and she wouldn't lose face for Lu Ziyu. As for the Thunder Xian Ratan, it was naturally better to hide it as deep as possible. Unless he had to take it like Lin Yi, otherwise only a fool would take it out in public to show off. Wouldn't that be asking for trouble for no reason? In this way no one could shake Lin Yi's first place. No matter how unwilling Kang Ming was, it was useless. Compared with Lin Yi's Thunder Xian Ratan, the value of his immature Thunder Xian Ratan was not just a little bit lower. There was basically no comparison between them. After all, a mature Thunder Xian Ratan could refine the best quality Thunder Xian pill, while an immature Thunder Xian Ratan could at most refine a low-grade Thunder Xian pill. The success rate of the former was close to 100%, while the latter was less than 60% at most. What was there to compare? At this time, standing in the corner, Ren Zhongyuan and the others looked at the Thunder Xian Ratan in Lin Yi's hands from afar. Their faces were filled with greed and they couldn't help but look at each other. They really didn't think that such a weak guy would be able to get a mature Thunder Shenratan in the end. This kind of heaven-defying luck was really fucking crazy. Chapter 47-41. Rin Zhongyuan and the others couldn't help but regret secretly. It would be great if they didn't part ways with this kid. Maybe the Thunder Shenratan wouldn't have fallen into this kid's hands. Instead, it would have been theirs. The longevity route that the three of them had worked so hard to get was simply a street good compared with the Thunder Shenratan. But it was useless to regret now. They couldn't do anything except drool at this time. Fortunately, since Lin Yi was bound to be the first, it meant that he would soon become Ning Shangling's son-in-law. Once he became West Island's son-in-law, he would definitely have nothing to do with Hui Yudi. This was Rin Zhongyuan's only self-comfort. However, at this moment, the two underlings standing behind him, Liu Zhou and Sun Baolu, saw this scene and wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Hui Yudi didn't come out before, and it wasn't an exaggeration to say that her life and death were unknown. Therefore, the two of them felt that there was no need to add to Rin Zhongyuan's troubles, so they didn't say what they saw in the trial ground before. But now not only did Hui Yudi come out, even her wild man came out with her. The two of them had to let Rin Zhongyuan know. Otherwise, if this matter were to be exposed in the future and Rin Zhongyuan found out that they had been cuckolded for so long because of the two of them hiding it, he would definitely flip out on the spot. The two of them couldn't bear Rin Zhongyuan's monstrous anger. Brother Rin, there's something we have to tell you. You have to hold on, Liu Zhou said cautiously. What's the matter? Rin Zhongyuan looked back at the two of them who wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. He couldn't help but frown. If you have something to say it quickly. That's fine. Brother Rin, you must hold on. Liu Zhou whispered and then gave Sun Baolu a look, motioning him to speak. Brother Rin, in fact, Hui Yudi has already hooked up with the man named Lin Yi. We saw her and Lin Yi having sex in broad daylight in the trial ground before. This is a real adulterous couple. Sun Baolu said bluntly. What the fuck are you talking about? Rin Zhongyuan slapped Sun Baolu without saying anything. Sun Baolu spun around 3 times from the slap. He saw stars and almost fainted. It wasn't that Rin Zhongyuan didn't believe them, it was just that this matter was simply impossible. Who was Hui Yudi? She was one of the Eastern Continent's prideful pair. She was a pure and innocent girl. How could she casually hook up with a man? What kind of fucking hookup? This kid's brain must be filled with sperm and dreaming. We're not talking nonsense. We took a photo. Hurry up and show it to Brother Rin. Sun Baolu covered his swollen mouth with one hand and looked at Rin Zhongyuan pitifully while urging Liu Zhou to take out the evidence. Under Rin Zhongyuan's murderous gaze, Liu Zhou hurriedly took out his digital camera. After fiddling with it for a while, he found the photo he had taken at that time and carefully handed it to Rin Zhongyuan. Rin Zhongyuan took it and looked at it. He was stunned. Although this photo was not particularly clear, it was enough to distinguish the two protagonists in it. Who else could it be but Hui Yudi lying on it? Looking at the unrestrained positions of the two people in the photo, he watched helplessly as his goddess actually hooked up with a man. Rin Zhongyuan's whole heart was cold. In an instant he was disheartened and even had the thought of dying. Yo, I didn't expect this Miss Hua to look so pure. I didn't expect her to be so open. What a pity. Yi Xiaotian, who was next to him, came over and took a look. He couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He had also coveted Hui Yudi for a long time. Tiske, I have long said that she is a woman. Senior Brother Ren, you didn't believe me before. Now, seeing is believing. Yao Jili didn't miss the opportunity to gossip. Hui Yudi had always been high and mighty in front of them, a goddess who didn't eat the food of mortals. Now she was finally beaten back to her original form. She was just a shameless slut. 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 Rin Zhongyuan was so angry that smoke came out of his head. He gritted his teeth and looked at the adulterous couple Lin Yi and Hui Yudi. At this moment there were only two things in his mind. Kill Lin Yi and then kill Hui Yudi the bitch. It was a pity that this was the territory of West Island, and it was also the side courtyard of the Summer Palace under the watchful eyes of the public. No matter how angry Rin Zhongyuan was, he could only hold it back first. Otherwise, if he moved a little, he would be the first to be unlucky. Don't worry, Brother Rin. You don't have to kill to vent your anger. I have a way to embarrass this adulterous couple in front of everyone so that you can vent your anger. Liu Zhou rolled his eyes and suggested a plan. Do you really have a way? Although Rin Zhongyuan's eyes were still full of fire, he was still a little rational. Hearing this, he turned his head and looked at him. Liu Zhou nodded repeatedly and whispered in Liu Zhou's ear. Ren Zhongyuan nodded again and again and said with a face full of resentment, "Okay, I'll do as you say. Today, let everyone see the true colors of this adulterous couple, and then I'll find a chance to kill them." While they were talking, Ning Shangling had begun to announce the result in public. Although there was no suspense, she still had to go through the formalities. "Everyone, after the cross-evaluation of a group of judges, I officially announce that the final winner of this West Island trial is Lin Yi from the North Island." There weren't any cheers or noises, but everyone looked at Lin Yi with envy, especially Kang Xiaoming's eyes that were filled with venom. Since he had won the West Island test, it was time to announce the more important show. According to the rules set at the previous birthday party, the winner of this West Island trial can become my daughter's future husband. Lin Yi, are you willing? Ning Shangling's eyes fell on Lin Yi, and there was a little imperceptible joy in her eyes. After all, he was the candidate she had been optimistic about for a long time. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was a dragon among men. What was more, he had a relationship with her daughter, and the two could be said to be a match made in heaven. Lin Yi glanced at Ning Xuefei, who was so shy that her heart was in a mess for a moment. Answering this question meant that he would be married to Ning Xuefei from now on, which was too unfair to the other women who had been waiting for him. Be it in terms of feelings or bonds, any one of them was far above Ning Xuefei. In terms of status, they were the ones who should be at the top. He felt that he owed them far too much and he wouldn't be able to repay this debt in a lifetime. However, it was an emergency, and it was impossible for Lin Yi to retreat at this time. Under the eyes of the public, he nodded solemnly and said, "I'm willing." Chapter 47-42. These three simple words made Ning Xuefei immersed in unparalleled shyness and joy. Although she had been thinking a lot these days and although her heart belonged to Lin Yi, she also knew that this matter was actually too hasty. Therefore, she had been a little hesitant in her heart. She wasn't sure if she could really entrust the rest of her life to him. However, because of Lin Yi's serious injuries, this hesitance and uneasiness in the past half a month had been covered up. She didn't expect that things would take a turn today. Only then did Ning Xuefei realize that she was really going to settle down with Lin Yi. All of this happened too suddenly, so suddenly that she was caught unprepared. She didn't know how to react. But now, although Ning Xuefei still didn't know what the future would be, she already knew her feelings. Because when she heard these three words from Lin Yi, she was very relieved and happy. This was already enough. Hearing these three words from Lin Yi, Han Jingjing and Laner, who were crowding around him, suddenly felt a little sour in their hearts for some reason. This feeling was complicated and difficult to understand. They had never felt this way before. With their characters, they rarely worried about anything. Even when Lin Yi was seriously injured this time, they were only worried for a while at the beginning. Later on, when they found out that Lin Yi was fine, they quickly returned to their previous state. However, this time they couldn't help but feel an indescribable bitterness in their hearts. It was as if their beloved things had been snatched away. Although they knew that Lin Yi wouldn't leave them because of this, they still felt an inexplicable sense of loss. However, the two of them wouldn't really be bothered by this matter. After all, the idea of letting Lin Yi become Ning Xuefei's future husband was instigated by the two of them at the beginning. In the future they would eventually have such a day. It was just that their best friend, Ning Xuefei, had gotten ahead of them temporarily. Compared to Han Jingjing and Laner, Huiyuti was really worried about her gains and losses. Looking at Lin Yi, she couldn't help but bite her lips. She didn't know how she should react at this moment. Should she congratulate Lin Yi? Or should she hold a grudge against this heartless man who doesn't know how to flirt? Huiyuti couldn't help but feel a little regretful. She regretted coming out and staying in the trial with Lin Yi. Wouldn't that be great? Once they came out, Lin Yi would definitely marry Ning Xuefei. This was something that had been announced long ago, and Lin Yi had also told her personally. How could he have forgotten about such an important matter just now? At the side, Lu Ziyu sighed. She patted Huiyuti's hand lightly. Huiyuti was her precious disciple whom she had brought up since she was young. She wasn't even her biological daughter, but she was even closer to her biological daughter. How could she not know what Huiyuti was thinking about? She originally thought that it would be nice if Lin Yi could become a couple with her precious disciple. Unfortunately, fate made fools of people. Now that Lin Yi had become Ning Xuefei's future husband, he definitely couldn't marry anyone else. Not only the people of West Island wouldn't agree, but even she, Lu Ziyu, wouldn't agree. Seeing that Lin Yi agreed in public, Ning Shangling was happy. She was about to officially decide on their marriage. However, before she spoke, two people suddenly stood out from the crowd and said loudly, No. Everyone present was stunned at once, and they all looked at Liu Zhou and Sun Balu strangely. They even dared to interrupt Ning Shangling's words in public. These two people were out of their minds. Were they tired of living? Who said no? How dare they make trouble in our West Island? Come on, drag them out. Ning Shangling didn't need to speak. Yan Xinlan, who was next to her, immediately ordered with a gloomy face. 4 disciples of West Island with towering momentum suddenly appeared around the two people. They were not ordinary guards. Disciples who could directly obey Yan Xinlan, the deputy island owner, were the elites of West Island. At least they had the cultivation of the mysterious ascending period. With the strength of Liu Zhou and Sun Balu, they had no power to resist at all. The two people were so scared that they wet their pants on the spot. If they were really dragged out, they would be half disabled even if they didn't die. They hurriedly shouted, "Wait! Lin Yi has a big problem with his character. He doesn't deserve to be West Island's son-in-law." As soon as these words came out, all the people present were in an uproar. Lin Yi himself looked inexplicable. He squinted at Liu Zhou and Sun Balu, but he had no impression of these two guys. But when he saw them standing next to Ren Zhongyuan's group, he seemed to be thinking about something. Oh. Ning Shangling didn't feel offended. She stopped the 4 guards of West Island with a look, and then her eyes fell on the two people, signaling them to continue talking. It was related to Ning Xuefei's marriage, and there was no room for carelessness. Although Ning Shangling was quite satisfied with Lin Yi, if he really had a big problem with his character as these two people said, then she had to reconsider. Although Ning Shangling's eyes were still calm and gentle at the moment, and other people present didn't feel anything strange, Liu Zhou and Sun Balu suddenly felt a lot of pressure. The majesty and overbearing hidden in her eyes couldn't be felt by outsiders. There was no pressure in her eyes, but the two people involuntarily knelt down. They couldn't help it, their knees didn't listen to them. In the previous trial, we saw with our own eyes that Lin Yi and Hui Yudi had sex in broad daylight. To be able to do such an immoral thing, it can be seen how bad this kid's character is. How can such a person be the prince consort of the West Island? Sun Balu couldn't bear the huge pressure and quickly said, Yes, we have evidence. You can see it for yourselves. Liu Zhou said as he took out the camera and showed it to everyone present openly. In an instant, the whole scene was in an uproar. There were always busybodies everywhere. After seeing such a hot photo, they all started to whistle at Lin Yi and Hui Yudi. All kinds of unpleasant comments came one after another. The side courtyard of the island master's palace became a low-class bar, full of obscene words. Ning Shangling, who had always been graceful and generous at this moment, her face completely darkened. Even though she was far away with her strength, she could naturally see clearly at a glance. The two people in the photo were none other than Lin Yi and Hui Yudi. Although Ning Shangling had already asked people to carefully investigate Lin Yi and knew that he had many lovers, not only Shanghai Laner and Han Jingjing were related to him, but also in other places, even in places like Middle Island and East Continent. There was no doubt that this was a man who was overflowing with love affairs. Chapter 47-43. But according to the rules passed down by the ancestors of West Island, if Lin Yi became Ning Xuefei's husband, he could only be with Ning Xuefei in name for the rest of his life, and couldn't have other women. After all, this was a society of women's rights. As the successor of West Island, Ning Xuefei naturally had to set an example for the people of West Island. However, rules were dead but people were alive. Ning Shangling knew very well that if they clung to these rules, then West Island would never be able to recruit an extraordinary genius like Lin Yi. If they secluded themselves, they would only get weaker and weaker, and the gap between them and other Heaven Stage islands would get bigger and bigger. In the end, they could only sink into oblivion forever. In fact, Ning Shangling had a lot of ways to circumvent this so-called ancestral rule, but there was an important prerequisite. Before these things were properly handled, they couldn't be brought up in public and had to be done in private. But now, Liu Zhou and Sun Balu suddenly jumped out at this time, and casually let everyone present see the photos. This immediately messed up Ning Shangling's plan, and it was hard to get off the tiger. And at this moment, Lu Ziyu's face was also very ugly. She could accept the relationship between Lin Yi and Hui Yudi in private, but to be exposed in public like this, that was a disgrace to the whole East Continent. Lu Ziyu suddenly flew into a rage out of humiliation. Although she secretly hated Hui Yudi for not having self-respect, she hated Liu Zhou and Sun Balu the most at this time, these two busybodies with ulterior motives. By doing this, not only did they disgrace her and East Continent, but more importantly, they damaged Hui Yudi's reputation, which was the most important thing for a girl. After noticing Lu Ziyu's fierce gaze, Liu Zhou and Sun Balu couldn't help but be frightened. He had already knelt down because of Ning Shangling's gaze. This time he couldn't even kneel steadily. His whole body was almost lying on the ground. His whole body was trembling like a sieve, and he couldn't stop trembling. Even if Lu Ziyu couldn't kill them in public in this public place, don't forget that they were going back to East Continent on the treasure ship together. At that time, the Vice Dean of Morning Pride Academy could casually think of something. It could kill the two of them without making a sound. Only then did the two of them feel extremely regretful. They wished they could slap themselves until they fainted. Fuck, why did they come up with such a stupid idea in a moment of hot-headedness? This was simply courting death. However, now that things had come to this, it was useless no matter how much they regretted it. Faced with the hostile gazes of Ning Shangling, Lu Ziyu, and Yen Xinlan, they could only brace themselves and continue speaking. In this West Island trial, everyone knew that it was related to the marriage of the Princess of West Island. However, Lin Yi did something improper with Hui Yudi in the trial. He clearly didn't put everyone in West Island in his eyes. Liu Zhou hurriedly shifted his hatred. Yes, this kind of person is morally inferior. He doesn't even take such an important trial seriously. Instead, he impairs public morals and plays with other women in broad daylight. How can this kind of person entrust the Princess of West Island to him? Sun Balu echoed. Those who were watching a good show didn't mind the matter getting bigger. The others also started to make a ruckus. Hui Yudi's face turned pale when she heard that. She became anxious instantly. She broke away from Lu Ziyu's hand and was ready to stand up and tell the truth. However, Lin Yi stood up one step ahead of her. He didn't want Hui Yudi to clarify. Although there was nothing between them, even if Hui Yudi told the truth, he couldn't escape the fact that he was lying under her skirt to treat the poison. If it was spread out, it would still cause irreparable damage to her reputation. Is it interesting to say this? Can this photo be used as evidence against us? Lin Yi said slowly and calmly. Everyone was stunned when they heard that. When this happened, everyone thought that Lin Yi would fly into a rage out of shame, but they didn't expect this guy to act like nothing had happened. It seemed that this had nothing to do with him at all. Could it be that it was fake? Isn't this the evidence? Everyone has seen it. This is the real and irrefutable evidence. Do you still want to quibble? Liu Zhou hurriedly insisted. Irrefutable evidence? You think a random photo can be used as irrefutable evidence? Ignorance isn't your fault, but treating us as fools like you is really not right. Lin Yi curled his lips disapprovingly. Ignorance? How are we ignorant? Liu Zhou and Sun Balu couldn't help but look at each other. The rest of the people revealed expressions of confusion. In any case, they didn't dare to join in the commotion at this time. Otherwise, they would really be treated as brainless fools. Wouldn't that make them clowns that would be laughed at by others? Seeing that Lin Yi had grasped the rhythm of everyone present with just a few sentences, and that a crisis that was about to get out of hand was actually so easily controlled by him, Ning Shangling, who had a gloomy expression, couldn't help but slightly curve up the corners of her mouth. It seems that Lin Yi is not only superior in strength, but he is also well versed in the way of dealing with people. He is far from being comparable to other young people of the same generation. He is really extraordinary. I came from the secular world. The mobile phones and cameras in the secular world now have Photoshop functions. It is very simple to put two people together. How can this be used as evidence? How dare you take it out to fool people on such a solemn occasion where so many sages gather? Lin Yi sneered and looked at the two of them like he was looking at idiots. This kind of retarded trick can only fool some brainless people. If you want to fool me from the secular world, you are simply asking to be humiliated. Yeah, big bro Lin's right. If you two want to, Jing can even Photoshop the two of you together. Do whatever you want, whatever position you want, even if it's Photoshopped, you guys don't want it. Han Jingjing said in support of Lin Yi. Her words made everyone burst into laughter. Although they didn't understand some of the secular words, they were smart people with flexible brains. It didn't prevent them from understanding the meaning. At this time, the gazes that they looked at Liu Zhou and Sun Balu became evil. The two of them were so embarrassed that their old faces turned red. Do you have evidence to prove that this photo is real? Ning Shangling immediately asked. The answer was obvious. Liu Zhou and Sun Balu were genuine natives of Heaven Stage Island. It was already amazing that they could use a camera. They thought that a photo was irrefutable evidence. How could they have thought that there was such a thing? The two of them were completely illiterate in technology. If they could explain this clearly in public, pigs could fly in the sky. Chapter 47-44. They had slandered Hui Yudi and Lin Yi in public. The former was Lu Ziyu's precious disciple, while the latter was Ning Shuefei's fiancé. Once they were convicted, the consequences could be imagined. Even if they were lucky enough to survive, they would definitely be punished. They might not even be able to return to the East Continent. Seeing that the matter was about to be settled, Kang Ming suddenly jumped out and said excitedly, "Whether the photos are real or not, I have the right to speak. I'm also from the secular world. As long as you bring the camera over and let me see if it has the Photoshop function, the truth will be revealed." For a moment, everyone revealed expressions of watching a good show. Kang Ming's intention was obvious. As long as he could bring down Lin Yi, then based on the results of this trial, he would undoubtedly be the biggest beneficiary. That was why he was so proactive. With such a sudden change in the situation, Lin Yi immediately knew that things were not going well. Of course, he knew that the photos of the two people were not photoshopped, especially since the other party's camera was a single-lens reflex. It did not have the so-called Photoshop function. He had said that just now purely to fool these two fools. It was obviously impossible to fool Kang Ming, a person from the secular world. As expected, Kang Ming took the camera and looked at it, then began to speak with fervor and assurance. He laid out all kinds of facts and reasoning to the people present in a professional and thorough manner. In fact, he had already seen through it. Otherwise he would not have jumped out so easily. It was a pity that the people present were all natives of the heavenly stage island. No matter how talented they were, no matter how wise and far-sighted they were, they had no scientific knowledge. Although Kang Ming said a few seemingly profound professional terms from time to time, it did not help in explaining the matter at all. Instead, it made people even more confused. They looked at each other and shook their heads in confusion. Kang Xiaoming was a dabbler himself, and it wasn't easy for him to explain the situation with just his mouth, especially with Lin Yi's random interruption in the middle. He had to rack his brain for a long time, and even after talking for a long time until his mouth was dry, he still couldn't convince anyone. The final result was that the crowd wasn't completely one-sided and remained skeptical. Although it still caused a lot of trouble for Lin Yi, he didn't manage to take down Lin Yi as he wished. The result could only be considered passable. What was supposed to be the closing ceremony of the trial had been turned into a science and technology debate. The development of the situation was really unexpected. Ning Shangling really didn't know what to say. Ning Shangling wanted to end this farce, but she couldn't help but worry about Lin Yi and Hui Yudi's reputation. If she abruptly stopped it, people would definitely gossip about her. No matter how she tried to explain or salvage the situation, it would be useless. Therefore, everyone, including Ning Shangling, could only continue to listen patiently. The wrangling would only end when they could come to a conclusion that everyone was convinced of. All of this. Hui Yudi was also confused, but she already understood Lin Yi's intentions. She couldn't help but secretly sigh in relief. Since she didn't need to say this somewhat awkward truth, it naturally couldn't be any better. That was naturally for the best. Seeing that everyone was getting a little impatient, and that Kang Ming's explanation was becoming more and more useless, Hui Yudi didn't miss the opportunity to stand out. She said with an indifferent expression, "Island Lord Ning, don't listen to that idiot's nonsense. Don't listen to that guy's bullshit. He was the one who injured Lin Yi during the test. He has a huge grudge against us. Therefore he's thinking of ways to maliciously slander us. His intentions are deserving of death." He was the one who injured Lin Yi? Ning Shangling's bright and beautiful eyes immediately narrowed slightly. Even if Hui Yudi didn't explain in detail, with her intelligence, she could roughly deduce what had happened based on the information she had obtained and the reactions of the two of them. Lin Yi and Kang Ming had most likely fought over the Thunder Shen Vine. The result was obvious that both sides were injured. Although both of them had obtained a Thunder Shen Vine, Ning Shangling was clearly on Lin Yi's side. Kang Ming was a shameless person who didn't abide by the rules. He really deserved to die. In that case, what he said was all false. No wonder he couldn't explain himself after talking for so long. Lu Ziyu said as she stared at Kang Ming with an unfriendly expression. She naturally had to help her disciple when there was an opportunity like this. That's right. Actually, there's no need for this matter to be so complicated. Disciple's chastity mark is still here, and that's the most convincing evidence. That idiot said so much nonsense just to confuse everyone's attention and fish in troubled waters. He's a despicable person harboring malicious intentions. Hui Yudi said with a cold snort. Is what you said true? Lu Ziyu was overjoyed when she heard that. She looked at Ning Shangling, and the two of them immediately asked Huiyuti to roll up her sleeves. The chastity mark on her arm was intact. Then everyone finally had no more doubts. Different from the perjury of the photos, the chastity mark was the real evidence, which proved that Huiyuti had not lost her virginity at all. As for having an affair with Lin Yi in broad daylight, that was naturally a lie. Ning Shangling's dignified gaze swept across the whole place and finally fell on Kong Ming. She said calmly, "What's your name? Kong Kaizi, right? Let me tell you, it's a felony to falsely accuse others in West Island. The severity of the punishment is beyond ordinary people's imagination. Do you still want to continue to argue?" Kong Ming was speechless at once. Damn it, what kind of name is this? When did I become Kong Kaizi? But now he also realized that if he continued to talk, not only would it be a waste of his saliva, he might even get into trouble. So he could only choose to shut up resentfully. When Kong Ming saw that the situation was not good, he could withdraw himself, but as the initiators Liu Zhou and Sun Baolu, it was really hard for them to back down now. If it was a false accusation, Kong Ming was at most joining in the fun, while the two of them were the real initiators. As for the two of you, considering that you're disciples of East State College, it's not convenient for me to punish you. Just leave it to Deputy Dean Liu to deal with. Don't spoil everyone's fun, Ning Shangling said lightly. Okay. Lu Ziyu nodded, glanced at the two of them coldly and said on the spot, "I'll deal with you properly when we go back." His words made Liu Zhou and Sun Balu's hair stand on end. It's over, it's really over this time. This time, the crime of false accusation was completely proven, and they even fell into the hands of the other party's master. Could they still have a good ending? Chapter 47-45. At this time, no one would care about these two poor guys. Things were finally back on track. Ning Shangling said loudly in public, "Now, as the owner of West Island, I solemnly announce that Lin Yi, the disciple of North Island, is the fiancée of my daughter, Ning Xuefei." All the people present applauded. Now that they had seen the fun, of course they had to give face to the host. They couldn't let the atmosphere be awkward. Besides, many of them had seen Lin Yi's strength, so they were sincerely convinced by Lin Yi. "Lin Yi, from today on, you have to remember that you are not only the disciple of the three pavilions of North Island, but also a member of West Island. In the future, every move you make outside should be based on the overall interests of West Island. Remember." Ning Shangling admonished him in public and then changed her tone. "Of course, if someone or something offends you, you don't have to swallow it. Although we are all women in West Island, we are never afraid of trouble. I and the whole West Island will be your strongest support." Hearing this, everyone present was envious, jealous, and hateful, and Lin Yi himself couldn't help feeling excited. Until this moment he suddenly had a hindsight. There was the Will of Heaven in Middle Island, Shanghai Tianhua in North Island, Ning Shangling in West Island, and the Ghost Thing, the former Azure Dragon of the Spirit Beast clan. Unconsciously, he had gathered such a powerful alliance around him. If such a super-powerful lineup could be mobilized, it would be enough to fight an unprecedented battle in Heaven Stage Island. Not to mention Dongzhou, at least in other places, they would absolutely be invincible. "As you say, island owner." Lin Yi immediately nodded and said in a deep voice. "Very well, you and Feifei are still young and it's not the time for you to get married. But according to the rules passed down by the ancestors of West Island, I will arrange for you to study in Dongzhou College at the same time. First, you can see the world, second, improve your strength, and third, cultivate your relationship. I hope that after you finish your studies and come back, you can complement each other. Take responsibility and protect West Island together." Ning Shangling said. This. Lin Yi couldn't help muttering in his heart when he heard that. Wouldn't this mess up his own arrangement? From then on, he would be completely tied to West Island and wouldn't even have the chance to act freely? Ning Shangling could tell that Lin Yi was worried. He smiled and didn't say anything. After a few more words of encouragement, he officially ended the trial of West Island, which was full of twists and turns. Everyone left one after another. Except for the West Island guards who were stationed here, only Lin Yi and the others were left in the side courtyard. Lin Yi's mind is full of worries. Ning Xuefei blushes and doesn't dare to look up at him, while Han Jingjing and Shengguan Laner's eyes are moving back and forth on their faces. It wasn't easy for us to have such a happy ending. You should at least say something to celebrate. Why aren't you saying anything? Han Jingjing asked curiously. Yes, now that you've become the fiancé of junior brother, I'm here to interview Feifei. Do you have any acceptance speech? Shengguan Laner took a roll of paper out of nowhere and handed it to Ning Xuefei as a microphone. This girl has been with Han Jingjing for more than half a month, so she is more and more familiar with the things of the secular world. What kind of award is this? Lin Yi suddenly laughed when he heard that. Although he was a little overwhelmed by the sudden addition of Ning Xuefei as his fiancée, after all, it was something that they had discussed long ago. Besides, they weren't officially married, so he didn't really feel uncomfortable about it. He just felt it was fresh. Lan Er only knows how to be funny. Ning Xuefei also chuckled. After all, she is a little girl with a simple mind. She just saw that Lin Yi didn't say anything and thought that he regretted it, so she was nervous. But now looking at Lin Yi's expression, she knew that she obviously thought too much. After such a scene, the awkward atmosphere finally returned to normal. Lin Yi and the three women's state was the same as before. There wasn't much change. If anything, it was just that his relationship with Ning Xuefei had become a little closer. Lin Yi, what were you thinking about just now? Were you thinking about Sister Hua? Ning Xuefei rolled her eyes and suddenly suggested, "Oh yeah, we haven't thanked Sister Hua yet. Let's go to her now, okay?" Okay. Han Jingjing and Shengguan Laner nodded repeatedly. Hua Yudi was Lin Yi's great benefactor, so she was their great benefactor. Moreover, in their hearts, Hua Yudi was already a sister. Of course they had to play together. Hearing this, Lin Yi smiled. Although the three women were all simple girls, relatively speaking, Ning Xuefei was more thoughtful. She must have noticed that Hua Yudi was a little sad just now, so she wanted to take the opportunity to comfort her, right? This is not urgent. Fei, let's go to see your mother first. I have something to ask her, Lin Yi said. Ah, what's the matter? Hearing this, Ning Xuefei was stunned, and then her pretty face suddenly turned red. She said weakly, "You don't want to ask when we will get married, do you?" Oh, Lin Yi almost choked. They'd just confirmed their status, and she was already thinking about getting married? What was going on in this girl's head? Did he look like he couldn't wait? "No, I have other things to discuss with your mother. Fei, it's not realistic for me to stay in West Island all the time. I still have a lot of things to do," Lin Yi said helplessly. Oh. Hearing the mischievous laughter of Han Jingjing and Shengguan Laner, Ning Xuefei suddenly blushed. After a while she explained, "Actually, even if you do that with me, you don't have to stay in West Island all the time." "Really?" Lin Yi's eyes lit up. "Really, my father doesn't stay in West Island all the time, so you can also move freely," Ning Xuefei said. "That's great." Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief and then asked, "By the way, I've never heard you talk about your father. Isn't he in West Island now?" "No, a few years ago he left with two powerful figures to protect the peace of Heaven Stage Island, and there's no news from him until now." Speaking of this, Ning Xuefei couldn't help feeling a little disappointed, but she wasn't too worried. After all, her father was also a powerful figure. Even if there was no news from him, there wouldn't be an irreversible accident. He left with two powerful figures? Lin Yi nodded thoughtfully and didn't continue to ask more questions. He still suggested, "Let's go to see your mother. I want to ask her about going to Dongzhou College." Okay. Ning Xuefei didn't mind. She immediately led Lin Yi to find Ning Shangling. Along the way they directly came to Ning Shangling's study without any notice. Chapter 47-46. Although Han Jingjing and Shanghai Laner were also together, they didn't go in to join in the fun. Instead they stayed outside to eat snacks. Women all like delicate and delicious snacks. In West Island, which was like a country of women, there were all kinds of snacks. The first thing they did when they got up every day was to eat snacks. "You're here." Ning Shangling was dealing with some things in the study at this time. When she saw Lin Yi and Ning Xuefei come in, she just raised her head and motioned them to find a place to sit down. It seemed that she didn't treat Lin Yi, her prospective son-in-law, as an outsider. Lin Yi didn't speak directly. He and Ning Xuefei looked at each other and sat down. When Ning Shangling finished dealing with the things at hand, he cleared his throat and said, "Island owner. Call me Aunt Ning for the time being. We'll be a family in the future. It's too distant to call me Island owner." Ning Shangling smiled gently. Of course, after they got married, she would have to call her mother-in-law. "Okay, Aunt Ning." Lin Yi didn't hesitate and immediately changed the way he addressed her. Ning Shangling smiled kindly. Not only was Ning Xuefei happy that Lin Yi could win the trial without any mishap, but she was also sincerely happy for her daughter as a mother. "Aunt Ning, I have a request and I hope you can agree," Lin Yi said after thinking for a while. "Just say it," Ning Shangling said. You just said that according to the rules of West Island, you will send me and Fei Fei to East Continent College for further study? Linny said. Yes, I want to talk to you about this. Except for a few colleges with extremely strict rules, you can choose all the other colleges in East Continent. Do you have any ideas? Ning Shangling asked. Aunt Ning, in fact, I don't want to go to East Continent for further study for the time being. It's not the right time for me to go to East Continent College. Going to East Continent College is likely to limit my development. What I need most now is to go everywhere to practice, not to find a safe place for further study. I hope you can understand this, Aunt Ning. Linny said earnestly. Ning Shangling's eyes slightly narrowed. He looked Linny up and down, noticing that the aura around him wasn't dispersing at all, unlike the other young prodigies. Linny nodded in approval. You're right, with your current situation, it'll be hard for you to stay in the East Continent School. It's a waste of time. Although East Continent College was full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons, in Ning Shangling's opinion, this so-called competition might not bring much pressure to Linny. When the environment became too comfortable, even the most spirited young people would gradually become depressed. And eventually, that Lin is he. Lin said. Fine, if that's the case, I'll put the matter of you going to the East Continent College aside for now. However, I have a condition. You have to send Fei Fei to the East Continent first. At least from the looks of it, you'll be accompanying her. Lin Ti said. And, I Zhou Lin she's you. Ning Xuefei was different from Lin Yi. Her unwillingness to cultivate was comparable to Shangguan Laner's. She only had the strength of the elixir realm. As the future successor of West Island, it was obviously not enough. Ning Shangling had long wanted to send her to the East Continent Academy for further studies, but she had always found all sorts of excuses to refuse. But this time Ning Xuefei could not escape. Lin Yi could cultivate on his own, but she had to stay in East Continent College. There was no room for negotiation. Ning Xuefei pursed her lips. Just as he was about to speak, he was choked back by Ning Shangling's glare. He knew his own affairs, so he could only shut his mouth resentfully. Thank you, Aunt Ning. Lin Yi immediately agreed. Going to the East Continent Academy for further studies was the rule of West Island. He thought it would not be so easy to change it. He did not expect Ning Shangling to agree so easily. It could be seen that his mother-in-law was flexible. This was good news for Lin Yi. Otherwise, if Ning Shangling was really a stubborn old dogma with her identity and status, she might cause a lot of trouble in the future. He did not expect her to be so easygoing. It seemed that his life in West Island would not be too difficult. It's up to you to decide. There's no need to thank me. Ning Shangling smiled, not minding it. She suddenly changed the topic. Lin Yi, how did you and Hui Yudi get out? Can you tell Aunt Ning the truth? Of course, if it's inconvenient, no one will force you. It's just about the transmission mechanism of West Island's trial, so I think it's necessary to figure it out. Before, Lin Yi's excuse that a master of the mysterious ascending stage sent them out was at most to deceive outsiders who did not know the inside story. Obviously, it could not fool the high-level officials of West Island like Ning Shangling. If a master of the mysterious ascending stage could really start the transmission formation, they should have found it hundreds of years ago. This was simply impossible. Aunt Ning is wise. To tell you the truth, I actually got out with my own true chi this time. Lin Yi said frankly. There was nothing to hide about this kind of thing. It was not convenient to speak frankly in front of outsiders, but now with the relationship between Ning Shangling and himself, of course, she could not be regarded as an outsider. Oh. Ning Shangling was slightly surprised. She thought that Lin Yi and Hui Yudi found some loopholes in the transmission formation, but she did not expect the answer to be so simple. The power of my martial arts skills has long been comparable to that of a master of the mysterious ascending stage, and I'm in the Yuanying stage. I took advantage of the loophole of the transmission formation so I could get out smoothly. Lin Yi explained in full detail. No wonder. With your current realm, you can be comparable to a master of the mysterious ascending stage. This is really unheard of and unseen. Ning Shangling was surprised, and suddenly she couldn't help but feel like she had picked up a treasure. This time she could get a prospective son-in-law like Lin Yi, who had incredible means, which was probably the most gratifying gain for her in West Island in these years. In fact, because Ning Xuefei had always disliked cultivation, Ning Shangling had a lot of headaches because of this in recent years. In terms of talent and aptitude, Ning Xuefei was actually a rare genius in the world. After all, her parents had strong genes, so she was not weak even if she wanted to. However, if she didn't work hard to cultivate, What was the use of having good talent and aptitude? All of Ning Xuefei's interests were in all kinds of research and inventions. Unfortunately, this was a small way that could not be learned in the Heaven Stage Island. If she wanted to take over West Island, she had to rely on her own strength. If her own strength was not enough, even if Ning Shangling could help her to get the position of the island owner would not be stable. Of course, Ning Shangling would try her best to improve her strength, but this was by no means a matter of a day and a night. But now with a strong support like Lin Yi, the pressure on Ning Xuefei was not as great as before. Husband and wife were one. As long as Lin Yi's strength could shock everyone, Ning Xuefei could naturally be as stable as Mount Tai. Chapter 47-47. Aunt Ning, you flatter me. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Ning Shangling asked Lin Yi to stay and talk for a while, mostly with gentle words of encouragement to improve their relationship. Finally, they had dinner together before she let Lin Yi leave, and she specially arranged a new residence for Lin Yi. After all, from today on Lin Yi was Ning Xuefei's legitimate fiancé, and it was inappropriate for him to live in the envoy's residence in West Island. Ning Shangling specially allowed him to live in the island master's temporary imperial residence, which was next to Ning Xuefei's yard and only a few steps away from Han Jingjing's and Shanghai Laner's rooms, which was convenient for them to get together. For the next few days Lin Yi had nothing else to do. He hung out with Ning Xuefei, Han Jingjing and Shanghai Laner all day long. He had no choice. After the trial, the three women were very clingy to him. It was impossible for Lin Yi to cultivate alone, so he could only take time to accompany the three of them as compensation for making them worry before. At the same time, in a small courtyard not far away from the island master's temporary imperial residence, Huiyuti paid no attention to what was going on outside. Every day she stayed indoors and immersed herself in cultivation. Lu Ziyu saw all this and her heart ached. As the saying goes, no one knows a daughter better than a mother. What Huiyuti was thinking, as a master who was not a mother but more like a mother, she knew clearly. Her precious disciple was lovesick. Don't cultivate in the house. Go out and get some fresh air, Lu Ziyu advised softly. No need, master. I've been neglected for so long in the trial of West Island. I want to make up for it. Huiyuti shook her head and said. More haste, less speed. Besides, you've reached a bottleneck now. It's useless to cultivate blindly. It's important to adjust your state of mind. Lu Ziyu looked at Huiyuti's sullen look and couldn't help feeling distressed, so she said, Aren't you very interested in things in the secular world? Han Jingjing came from the secular world. Go and play with them. Huiyuti couldn't help but be stunned. It was only when she saw the playful smile on her master's face that she came to a realization. She nodded shyly and ran out of the room. Looking at Huiyuti's back view, which had clearly become excited once again, Lu Ziyu sighed slightly, thinking to himself that fate was really making fools of people. The heavens had clearly brought the two of them together, but now they had mercilessly sentenced Lin Yi to Ning Xuefei. How cruel was this to die? Actually, from the bottom of his heart, Lu Ziyu did not want Huiyuti and Lin Yi to have any more contact. After all, Lin Yi was already West Island's Fuma, and this was an unchangeable fact. Lin Yi's strength was outstanding. It was far beyond Lu Ziyu's expectations. Especially when she found out from Huiyuti how they came out of the trial ground, she subconsciously felt that she was a celestial being. A mere middle-stage nascent soul cultivator could be compared to an expert of the profound ascension stage. How exaggerated, how nature-defying. Huiyuti originally wanted to keep this matter a secret, but she didn't know why. When Lu Ziyu asked, she couldn't help but say it. In short, she just wanted to show how powerful Lin Yi was in front of her master. Anyway, her master wouldn't spread it out. In fact, looking at Lu Ziyu's shocked expression after hearing it, she really felt satisfied, and her face was full of pride. It was just that Lin Yi didn't belong to her anymore. Although it was a pity, there was no other way. Lu Ziyu originally thought that after the matter between Lin Yi and Ning Xuefei was settled, Huiyuti could give up on Lin Yi with peace of mind. She didn't expect it to become like this. Looking at Huiyuti's abnormal behavior these few days, how could she have the intention to let go? As someone with experience, Lu Ziyu clearly knew that if this matter couldn't be resolved properly, it might become a mental calamity that her precious disciple couldn't overcome. Perhaps from then on, it would become a mental tribulation that his precious disciple couldn't overcome. It might seem fine at normal times, but once it came to a critical moment like a breakthrough, it would become a fatal flaw. Therefore, since Huiyuti and Lin Yi couldn't be together, then there had to be a thorough end between them. Only by saying it out clearly could this matter come to an end. Otherwise, if she kept it in her heart for no reason, not to mention breaking through to the next level, it was very likely that she would go berserk, and then it would be too late for regrets. While Lu Ziyu was frowning, she didn't know that Hui Yudi herself was in high spirits at this moment. She had completely misunderstood the meaning, thinking that Lu Ziyu was encouraging her to be together with Lin Yi. If Lu Ziyu knew her precious disciple's thoughts, she really didn't know how she would react. Maybe she would directly cry until she fainted in the toilet. No matter what, they were the morning prodigies, the high and mighty goddesses in the eyes of countless East Continent Academy disciples. Who would rush her to their doorstep like this? Arriving at Ning Xuefei's courtyard, Hui Yudi couldn't help but feel both excited and apprehensive as she listened to the cheerful laughter of Lin Yi and the others. Being able to see Lin Yi again after so many days made her happy, but how should she face Ning Xuefei and the others? They were all Lin Yi's confidants. Although she didn't think in this direction at the start, at this moment, she couldn't help but think about what she should do after seeing Ning Xuefei and the others. As the proud daughter of East Continent Academy, at this moment, she was actually feeling guilty and apprehensive, like a concubine meeting her mistress. The matter clearly hadn't even taken shape yet. If Lin Yi were to find out about this, he would really be drunk. Sister Hua, why are you so late? At this time, Ning Xuefei's surprised voice came from the courtyard. Unlike the others, because of Ning Shangling and Lu Ziyu, she had known Hui Yudi for a long time. It was just that West Island and East Continent were too far apart, so they rarely had the opportunity to meet. In an instant, the eyes of Lin Yi, Shangguan Laner, Han Jingjing and the others all fell on Hui Yudi. Hui Yudi was so shy that she didn't dare to move. I just came out to take a walk and get some fresh air. Hui Yudi quickly made up an excuse. She didn't dare to say that she actually came for Lin Yi, that would be too embarrassing. Come out to get some fresh air? Ning Xuefei and the others looked at each other and smiled. Her courtyard was far away from here. How could she come here just by taking a walk? They didn't expose her, but immediately ran over to hold her hand and said, "Since you're here, play with us. We've been waiting for you for a few days. Aunt Lu said that you were busy cultivating in seclusion, so we didn't dare to disturb you." Yeah, Jingjing has been looking forward to Sister Hua's coming. Now we have one more good sister, hee hee. Han Jingjing smiled sweetly. Chapter 47-48. I'm not. Hui Yudi blushed at his words and quickly shook her head to deny it. What are you talking about? Sister Hua, you are still wearing the secular clothes given by the little junior brother. It can be seen that you have acquiesced in it and made a happy decision. Shanghai Laner said with a teasing face. Hui Yudi just put on this set of denim sportswear today. Originally she was happy in her heart, but now she suddenly choked. Why did I acquiesce in it? What did I acquiesce in? Lan don't be complacent. You talk as if you have no part in it. Don't you want to be our sister? Ning Xuefei stood out to smooth things over, and her words made Shanghai Laner also choke. Together with Han Jingjing, she pulled Hui Yudi to Lin Yi. You're here. Lin Yi greeted her with a smile. Yes, I'm here. Hui Yudi blushed and didn't dare to look at Lin Yi. She didn't know why. When she saw Lin Yi a little closer this time, her heart pounded wildly as if it was about to jump out, making her breathless. Come and sit down. They were just talking about you and pestered me to talk about the trial in West Island. I was in a coma and didn't know so much. Why don't you tell them about it? Lin Yi naturally took Hui Yudi's hand and let her sit next to him. Hui Yudi suddenly screamed with an electric shock. Obviously, she didn't expect that Lin Yi would take her hand in front of Ning Xuefei and the others. She immediately lowered her head shyly. While her heart was beating wildly, she slowly felt sweet. Yes, Sister Hua, tell us about it. Ning Xuefei and the other two looked at each other and smiled, rushing to be the first. They crowded around Hui Yudi with great interest. Hui Yudi was quite flattered by this kind of friendly attitude, and the nervousness in her heart disappeared. She was just worried about how to get along with them, but now it seemed that she was simply overthinking things. Regardless of whether it was Ning Xuefei, Han Jingjing, or Shangguan Laner, they were all kind-hearted girls. The dirty things that she had thought of before, such as being ostracized and targeted, would never happen to them. Hui Yudi couldn't help but feel a little ashamed in her heart. She had gauged the heart of a gentleman with her own mean measure. His worries disappeared. Hui Yudi quickly became one with the girls. Although she was a little older than Ning Xuefei and the others, her personality was very simple. Getting along with her was naturally warm and happy. The friendship between young girls was sometimes very strange. In a short period of time, Hui Yudi, Ning Xuefei, and the others seemed to have become best friends who regretted not having met earlier. The more they chatted, the more they got along. It was full of common topics. This time it was Lin Yi who felt bored. With this group of young girls, he was simply an outsider who couldn't get a word in. Of course, Lin Yi was actually very pleased with this result. Although these girls were kind-hearted, they were actually very clever. Hui Yudi didn't say anything and they didn't say anything either. But everyone knew what they were thinking, but they didn't point it out in public. In the next few days, Hui Yudi and the girls completely got along and even moved in. The four girls directly opened a big bed in Ning Xuefei's room and slept together at night. Of course, Lin Yi didn't have a share in it. Even if Ning Xuefei was his nominal fiancé, he couldn't enter the boudoir, not to mention that there were four of them here at once. As for the daytime, Ning Xuefei took Lin Yi and the girls to wander around West Island, just like Lin Yi took her to visit North Island. Basically, they went around all the famous places, and the local customs were completely different from other places. It really opened Lin Yi's eyes. However, in the process there were often embarrassing things. Everywhere they went, they were always blocked. A group of people in West Island wanted to come and see Lin Yi, the future Fuma of West Island. This feeling of being surrounded like an animal really made Lin Yi speechless, and he could only flee. In contrast, Ning Xuefei and Hui Yudi, who were as beautiful as fairies, didn't care about them. If the four of them went out to the outer island, they would definitely enjoy the same treatment as Lin Yi. Unfortunately, this was West Island, and the streets of West Island were full of women. Men couldn't come out casually. Hui Yudi had fun with Lin Yi and others, but Ren Zhongyuan on the other side didn't notice it at all. He thought that Hui Yudi was still in closed-door training these days. Every day, he was thinking of finding an opportunity to please her, so as not to leave a bad impression on her because of the previous misunderstanding. Since he saw the virginity mark on Hui Yudi's arm that day, like others, he completely regarded the photo as a fart. No matter how the two poor guys, Li Yuzhou and Sun Baolu, begged for mercy, he didn't even need Lu Ziyu to do anything. He took the lead to beat them half to death, wanting to express his goodwill to Hui Yudi, and at the same time he rushed to delete the photo so as not to spread it and ruin the reputation of his sweetheart. But beating the two underlings was only his duty. Ren Zhongyuan also knew that it was impossible to get Hui Yudi's forgiveness. He heard that Hui Yudi was very interested in the mobile phones of the secular world, so he simply wanted to cater to her. It was a pity that although the Central Chamber of Commerce mainly sold all kinds of technological products, it rarely sold mobile phones, the most commonly used thing in the secular world. After all, there was no base station on Tianji Island, and mobile phones were purely a decoration. They couldn't run to the operator just to sell mobile phones. On Tianji Island, if you wanted to buy a mobile phone, you could only specially order one. But Ren Zhongyuan wasn't Ning Xuefei. Although he had some background in East Continent College, it was a pity that the Central Chamber of Commerce of West Island wouldn't buy it. Ordering a mobile phone was purely wishful thinking. In desperation, Ren Zhongyuan wandered back and forth in the Central Chamber of Commerce for a long time, and finally had to give up the idea of buying a mobile phone. Instead, he took a fancy to a pair of walkie-talkies. In his opinion, this thing was also very awesome, and its functions were not too different from a mobile phone. He believed that Hui Yudi would definitely like it after seeing it. Gritting his teeth, Ren Zhongyuan tightened his belt and did not hesitate to spend a sky-high price to buy the walkie-talkies. He immediately rushed to find Hui Yudi, wanting to give his sweetheart a big surprise. But it wasn't so easy for him to see Hui Yudi. He lived in the envoy residence of West Island, but Hui Yudi lived in the temporary imperial residence of the island master because of the close relationship between Lu Ziyu and Ning Shangling. If there was no special reason, no outsider was allowed to step into the temporary imperial residence of the island master, let alone a man like Ren Zhongyuan. Chapter 47-49. Of course, this was also because Hui Yudi and the others lived in a more remote area. Otherwise, if it was a core area like Ning Xuefei's residence, even a profound ascension expert at the peak of the nascent soul stage wouldn't be able to get half a step closer, let alone a mere peak nascent soul cultivator like him. After successfully sneaking into Hui Yudi's courtyard and avoiding the eyes and ears of some servants, Ren Zhongyuan quickly found Hui Yudi's room. He wasn't unfamiliar with this place. Previously, he had come here once under the pretext of visiting Lu Ziyu. Hui Yudi's room was the target of his dreams, and he often came here in his dreams. After slightly sorting out his excited feelings, Ren Zhongyuan directly pushed the door open and entered. In name, he wanted to give Hui Yudi a surprise, but in fact, What he was thinking more was that it would be best if he could take this opportunity to see some wonderful scenes that he usually couldn't see, such as bathing or changing clothes. As soon as the door opened, Ren Zhongyuan's head immediately poked in, his eyes darting around as he searched everywhere. His mind was filled with charming fantasies of Hui Yudi wearing thin clothes, but the person in front of him gave him a huge shock. Right now the person sitting in the room wasn't Hui Yudi, but Lu Ziyu. Right now Lu Ziyu was in the room studying the Thunder Shen Vine, not because she coveted her disciples' things, but because for someone at her level the Thunder Shen Vine was already useless. Right now she was studying this purely for Hui Yudi. After all, the Thunder Shen Vine was the main material for refining the Thunder Shen pill, and its quality was very important. Moreover, whether it was mature or not directly affected the choice of other materials. Hui Yudi herself was muddle-headed, so these things could only be taken care of by her master, who was both a teacher and a mother. Hui Yudi had been staying with Ning Xuefei and the others for the past few days, so Lu Ziyu had never expected that someone would suddenly push open the door. Furthermore, the person who came was not Hui Yudi. In her shock, she did not even have the time to retract the Thunder Mystic Vine on the table, and Ren Zhongyuan immediately saw it clearly. With Lu Ziyu's strength, it was originally impossible for Ren Zhongyuan to escape her perception, but this was the island master's temporary imperial residence. There was no need to go into details about the strict and thorough security. Normal people wouldn't think that someone would actually sneak in here. Moreover, out of the most basic respect for those old seniors of West Island, Lu Ziyu wouldn't easily use her divine sense here. Moreover, from time to time, there were servants walking in the courtyard's corridor, and it was very normal to have footsteps. This caused Lu Ziyu to let her guard down. Who would have thought that someone actually dared to come in without knocking? Ah! Ren Zhongyuan was similarly shocked. He had secretly come to give Hui Yudi a surprise. Who knew that he would actually meet Lu Ziyu in this room? This feeling was like sneaking into your sweetheart's room, only to find out that it was your sweetheart's mother when you turned on the lights. In an instant, his heart turned cold and he didn't feel good. However, Ren Zhongyuan didn't feel very awkward at this moment, because he saw the Thunder Mystic Vine on the table. He never expected that Lu Ziyu would also have a Thunder Mystic Vine. Previously, when Ren Zhongyuan saw Lin Yi take out the Thunder Shen Rattan, he was so envious that his eyeballs almost fell out. He was at the peak of the nascent soul realm, and he was the most eager person in the world to get the Thunder Shen Rattan. If Lin Yi hadn't become the Fuma of West Island, Ren Zhongyuan and the others would never let go of this fat piece of meat. They would definitely try their best to get the Thunder Xuanwu in his hands. But now it was impossible. They would never dare to rob the things of West Island's Fuma in the territory of West Island, even if they had 10,000 guts. However, Hui Yudi also had a Thunder Profound Rattan. Could it be that Lin Yi had given it to her? Although Lu Ziyu was holding it, this was Hui Yudi's room, and the Thunder Shen Rattan was useless to Lu Ziyu. Ren Zhongyuan immediately guessed the truth. He suddenly felt a surge of jealousy in his heart, and he faintly felt that there was something fishy about the photo of Li Yuzhou and Sun Baolu. But now wasn't the time to look into this. The two parties were in a stalemate for a moment. Ren Zhongyuan suddenly rolled his eyes. Not only did he not retreat, but he also walked in and even closed the door behind him. You're still not going out? You're trespassing into someone else's room, and this is the temporary imperial residence of the island owner. Are you really not afraid of death? Lu Ziyu's eyes suddenly narrowed. If Hui Yudi saw Ren Zhongyuan's action, her heart would really tremble, and she might even think that he was beastly. Unfortunately, she was Lu Ziyu. Ren Zhongyuan, who was at the peak of the nascent soul realm, was just a slightly stronger ant in her eyes. Haha, Deputy Dean Lu, don't be angry first. If I'm not wrong, this should be the Thunder Shen Rattan, right? Ren Zhongyuan asked despite knowing the answer. Why are you still asking when you already know? Lu Ziyu looked at him coldly. She had more or less heard of the relationship between Li Yuzhou and Ren Zhongyuan, so she had an extremely bad impression of this guy. She said expressionlessly, Do you have something to say? The Thunder Shen pill is a 7th grade medicinal pill, and only a 7th grade alchemist has the ability to refine it. But in our Eastern Continent's Golden Rank Academies, there are only a few 7th grade alchemists. Ren Zhongyuan deliberately paused and looked at the other's changing expression. I think Deputy Dean Lu should understand what I mean now, right? Lu Ziyu frowned when she heard this. This was the biggest matter on her mind for the past few days. Although the Thunder Shen Rattan was good, if it couldn't be refined into a Thunder Shen pill, then it was completely useless. Originally, their Morning Pride Academy had a 7th grade alchemist overseeing it. But unfortunately 2 years ago an alchemy accident had occurred, and this 7th grade alchemist had suffered an extremely heavy backlash. Since then he had been in seclusion to recuperate. Now, the highest grade alchemist overseeing the Morning Pride Academy was only 6th grade, so wanting to refine the Thundershan pill was not a small matter. But Ren Zhongyuan's father was Soaring Cloud Academy's chief alchemist, and his cultivation was 7th grade. This was the peak level of a golden rank alchemist, and he was only one step away from the legendary black rank alchemist. What you mean is you can help me refine the pill? Lu Ziyu threw a glance at Ren Zhongyuan. A 7th grade alchemist was not so easy to invite. If they did not have a sufficient relationship, even with her status, it would be very difficult to invite a 7th grade alchemist. However, Ren Zhongyuan clearly had this ability. 7th grade medicinal pills are very difficult to refine, and the slightest carelessness will cause a backlash. Deputy Dean Liu, you should be very clear on this point. Ren Zhongyuan smiled and said in the tone of an expert, and according to what I know, among the 7th grade medicinal pills, the risk of refining the Thunder Shen pill is the highest. The Thunder Shen Rattan is naturally filled with thunder and lightning, and one mistake will cause the furnace to explode. The consequences are unthinkable, and ordinary 7th grade alchemists are not willing to accept this kind of life-threatening task. Hehe. Chapter 4750. What are your conditions? Lu Ziyu asked in a low voice. She didn't think that the other party would unconditionally court her. Even if Ren Zhongyuan was willing, his father might not be willing. Vice Principal Lu, you also know that I've been in love with junior sister Yudi for a long time, and with our conditions, it can be said that we're a match made in heaven. Why don't you just help me out? Ren Zhongyuan finally revealed his fox's tail. This. Lu Ziyu immediately fell into deep thought. Seeing the other party hesitate, Ren Zhongyuan's eyes turned, and he hurriedly struck while the iron was hot. According to the rules, any 7th grade alchemist who receives a request to refine pills only needs to pay 1 completed pill. If it's completely useless, then there's not a single pill. But with my father's methods, these Thunder Shen vines are enough to refine 4 Thunder Shen pills. And I can promise to give you 2 pills. This condition should be generous enough, right? This time Lu Ziyu was instantly moved. Such a condition was not only generous, but it was basically the only one that could offer such a thing. Even if it was the 7th grade alchemist from her Morning Pride Academy, it would not be possible for him to guarantee that he would be able to give out 2 Thunder Profound pills. If it was not a close relative or close friend, no 7th grade alchemist would be able to offer such a condition. No matter how great the talent, no matter how great the potential, it was very difficult to guarantee success in breaking through to the Profound Ascension realm. Huiyudi was no exception, but if she had 2 Thunder Shen pills in her hands with double insurance, then her confidence would be completely different. Seeing Lu Ziyu's expression, Ren Zhongyuan immediately smiled. The saying that money moves people's hearts was indeed successful. Even a big shot like the other party couldn't avoid it. As for the remaining 2 Thunder Shen pills, naturally junior sister Yudi and I will each have 1. Vice Principal Lu, what do you think? Ren Zhongyuan continued to tempt him without any hesitation. What? Lu Ziyu was immediately shocked, looking at Ren Zhongyuan in disbelief. You mean these 2 Thunder Shen pills of mine aren't considered to be for Yudi? Ah, that's only natural. As long as you agree to this matter, then junior sister Yudai will already be my dual cultivation companion. How could I trouble Vice Dean Liu with her medicinal pills? Ren Zhongyuan said with a laugh as he patted his chest in a rich and overbearing manner. Taking a deep look at Ren Zhongyuan, Lu Ziyu couldn't help but fall into silence. To be honest, after hearing these conditions she was really tempted. After all, besides Ren Zhongyuan, who was the son of a 7th grade alchemist, no one else could offer such conditions. She couldn't help but be tempted, otherwise if she couldn't find someone to help her refine pills, no matter how precious the Thunder Shen vine was, it would not be of any use. Instead, if the dense electric arc slowly dissipated. If it completely disappeared, it would lose its effect and become a pile of trash through and through. Because of this matter, Lu Ziyu couldn't eat or sleep for the next few days. She had even seriously considered whether she should put down her pride and ask Ning Shangling for help. With the huge power of West Island, of course, it was impossible that she couldn't find a 7th grade alchemist, and with the friendship between her and Ning Shangling, she shouldn't be rejected. However, after thinking about it carefully, this didn't seem very realistic because this was a matter of principle, and it wasn't something that could be swayed by mere personal feelings. As the owner of West Island, Ning Shangling could decide the fate of the entire West Island with one word, and this kind of small thing was nothing to her. But unless it was the last resort, she would never do it. Besides, there had never been such a precedent in West Island. If it was because he couldn't swallow his pride this time. Ning Shangling clenched her teeth and set a precedent. Then this matter would spread out. What if other friends also came to ask her for help? How should she respond at that time? Furthermore, if someone relied on their friendship to directly ask her for a ready-made Thunder Profound core, what should she do? Once human nature became greedy, it was like a bottomless pit. This kind of thing was not impossible. Lu Ziyu and Ning Shangling had never been friends based on interests, but real good friends. As a friend, of course, she couldn't put the other party in such an awkward situation because of her own selfishness. So, after thinking about it again and again, she could only give up the ready-made way in West Island. In this way she had very few choices. Although she was the deputy dean of Morning Pride Academy, she, Lu Ziyu, had never been a person who had a wide circle of friends. The number of real friends she had could be counted on one hand, and it was even more impossible to find someone who could help her in this matter. After frowning and thinking for a long time, Lu Ziyu finally sighed and said ambiguously, "This is a big deal. I have to think about it carefully. I'll give you an answer in 2 days." Deputy Dean Lu, the opportunity doesn't come again. You have to think about it carefully. When Ren Zhongyuan heard this, he was instantly a little unwilling. He knew the principle that a long delay could cause trouble. It was best to settle this matter in one go, not giving Hui Yudi any chance or leeway to react. Directly saying that it was impossible to disobey the master's orders and get married by imperial decree. Otherwise, if it dragged on for too long, there might be variables. Just as the other party had said, if she missed this opportunity, there wouldn't be another one. Lu Ziyu couldn't help but feel a little troubled. According to her thinking, this matter was definitely reliable, otherwise she wouldn't have considered it so seriously. According to Ren Zhongyuan's suggestion, 3 of the 4 Thunder Profound cores would belong to the master and disciple, and with these 3 Thunder Profound cores, it would be enough to guarantee Hui Yudi entering the Profound Ascension stage. This was a good thing that one could only dream of. Moreover, the conditions that Ren Zhongyuan had proposed were not too excessive. In Lu Ziyu's opinion, although Ren Zhongyuan's talent was far inferior to that of Lin Yi, he had one in that he had been infatuated with Dai for so many years. Coupled with his identity and background, he could be considered a rare good match. Even if he wasn't as attractive as Lin Yi, he was definitely not much worse. Moreover, no matter how good Lin Yi's conditions were, he was already the prospective son-in-law of West Island. Hui Yudi was destined to have no future with him, so she might as well take this opportunity to break things off. 2 days, I'll give you an accurate answer in 2 days. You can go back first. Lu Ziyu said in a calm tone. Although she was moved, she was a big boss after all, and it was impossible for her to be led by the nose by a small character like Ren Zhongyuan so easily. This matter was related to her precious disciple's lifelong happiness, so she definitely wouldn't make a decision so hastily. Chapter 4751. Seeing Ren Zhongyuan push open the door and leave, Lu Ziyu sat in the room and let out a long sigh. She was secretly thinking about how she should tell Hui Yudi about this matter. She naturally understood her disciple's thoughts, but whether it was out of sentiment or reason, she had to agree to this matter. She mustn't waste time on it. After 2 hours, the sky outside had already darkened. Hui Yudi came back humming a little tune. She pushed open the door and entered happily. In the end, she saw Lu Ziyu sitting in the room the moment she raised her head. "Master, you were waiting for me?" Hui Yudi was slightly stunned. Then she excitedly ran over and hugged Lu Ziyu's arm. She said in a spoiled tone, hasn't come back these few days. Master, you won't blame Dai, right? Girl, you've become too playful. You're having fun by yourself and you've thrown your master to the back of your mind." Lu Ziyu dotingly tapped her head and asked with a smile, "How is it? How are you getting along with Fei Fei and the others?" "Very good. We're like sisters now. Fei Fei, Jingjing and Lan are all very kind and adorable girls. They're much better than those in our academy," Hui Yudi said, wrinkling her nose. These girls in our academy aren't born into scheming. They're all forced by their environment. Sometimes humans have to lower their heads. They have to learn to let nature take its course and learn to accept their fate." Lu Ziyu guided her with a deep meaning. "Master, doesn't everyone say that the ultimate goal of cultivation is to defy the heavens and change one's fate? Why do we have to accept our fate?" Hui Yudi asked, blinking her eyes. "Defy the heavens and change one's fate? Lu Ziyu shook his head and smiled bitterly, sighing emotionally. It's just empty words. How can there really be anything in this world that can defy the heavens and change one's fate? All living things have a fate that is hard to defy, and although cultivators like us have broken through the limits of our own lifespans, we're merely struggling at death's door between obeying fate and defying fate. If there were really people who could defy the heavens would have collapsed long ago. What right do we have to continue living then? Huiyuti nodded, not really understanding. She did not have Lu Ziyu's experience and knowledge. At most, she could only understand the literal meaning of these words, but the true meaning was not something she could understand right now. Alright, I haven't asked you yet. You should have seen Lin Yi these few days, right? Lu Ziyu asked. Huiyuti's face immediately turned red when she heard this, and she weakly responded in a bashful manner. His face was brimming with happiness. Although she didn't have the chance to be alone with Lin Yi these days, she still felt happy to be able to stay by Lin Yi's side with Ning Xuefei and other close friends. Looking at his disciple's expression of being unable to extricate himself, Lu Ziyu could not help but feel a headache coming on. After thinking for a while, he said, "Since you've already met, then it's time to put an end to the matter between the two of you. After returning to the East Continent in 2 days, you won't have anything to do with him anymore." Huiyuti was originally still immersed in joy, but this time, it was as if a bucket of ice water had been poured over her head. She looked at her master in a daze, not knowing how to react. Don't think that master is cruel. You and Lin Yi are destined to be fated but not to be together. There won't be a good result if you continue to force it. Listen to master, let him go. Lu Ziyu sighed. Then he said, Ren Zhongyuan came today and he saw the Thunder Shen vine on the table. Hence, he thought of a suggestion. He asked his father to refine the Thunder Shen pill for us. He guaranteed that he would be able to refine 4 pills, and 2 of them would be given to us. Is that kind? Don't tell me there are no other conditions? Huiyuti immediately frowned when she heard this. Although she didn't know the exact market, she knew that this bit of Thunder Shen vine could be exchanged for 2 Thunder Shen pills. This was practically free, and she didn't believe that there was such a good thing in the world. There is indeed a condition. He wants to become Dao companions with you, Lu Ziyu said calmly. What? Huiyuti was instantly dumbfounded. She looked at Lu Ziyu with a face full of disbelief, and after a long while she asked with a trembling voice, Master, you agreed to it? No. Lu Ziyu shook his head, sighed and said, This is your marriage to her. Master won't be so unreasonable and make a decision with a single word. However, I hope that you can agree. Huiyuti instantly heaved a sigh of relief, and looked at her master in a daze. Why? Master has already said it earlier. Although Lin Yi is good, there is bound to be no outcome between you and him. Rather than being harmed by him in the future, it's better to let him go as soon as possible. Lu Ziyu paused, hugged Huiyuti tenderly and said, Breaking through to the profound ascension realm is not a small matter. This is an extremely important dividing line in our path of cultivation. After profound ascension is the beginning of a great future, but if you suffer a setback at this time, then you can forget about successfully breaking through for the rest of your life. You will forever be stuck at the nascent soul great circle, unable to advance even an inch, and might even continuously regress. Your disciple knows all of this, but... Huiyuti clenched her teeth, not knowing what to say for a moment. In her opinion, breaking through to the profound ascension realm was admittedly important, but if she couldn't be together with the person she loved because of this, then let alone profound ascension, even if she could directly become an immortal, she still wouldn't be happy. Don't be in a hurry to refuse. Actually, if you think about it carefully, Ren Zhongyuan is also a pretty good match, isn't he? Moreover, his conditions are also very good. Not only did he promise to give us 2 Thunder Profound pills, the remaining 2 will also be equally divided with you, That is to say, out of the 4 pills, 3 will be given to us. For this section of the Thunder Profound Vine, if you go to find another 7th grade pill refiner for help, they might not be able to refine 4 Thunder Profound pills, let alone directly give us 3. Lu Ziyu earnestly advised. Huiyuti sank into silence. She obviously knew that Lu Ziyu was doing this for her own good, and everything he did was in consideration for her. Otherwise, why would he lower himself to the point of bargaining with a person like Ren Zhongyuan? However, she had never liked Ren Zhongyuan. She didn't like him in the past and she disliked him even more now. Even if there was no Lin Yi, she still wouldn't be willing to become a Dao companion with such a person, let alone now that her heart already belonged to someone else. She was extremely unwilling in her heart, but Huiyuti couldn't ignore her master's good intentions. In this world where a master's life was greater than the heavens, Lu Ziyu being able to not make the decision to betroth her to Ren Zhongyuan, and instead earnestly advise her face to face, this in itself was already very pampering. Chapter 4752. After all, Huiyuti was her precious disciple who she treated as her own daughter. She really couldn't bear to force her too much. However, she had no choice but to say these words. This concerned her future, and she couldn't just watch as Huiyuti personally destroyed her future. Huiyuti sat in the room in a daze. Her mind was blank. She knew that she couldn't hesitate in this kind of matter. No matter what, she had to quickly sort out her thoughts and make a decision as soon as possible. However, her brain wouldn't listen to her. She couldn't think of anything and could only stare blankly. After a sleepless night, Huiyuti only woke up when the first rays of the morning sun shone on her face through the window and she heard the chirping of birds outside. She forced herself to compose herself and walked out of the room in a daze. After leaving the room, Huiyuti went straight to Lin Yi's group. She wasn't looking for Lin Yi's help, but something they'd agreed to do yesterday. They'd agreed to swim at the beach nearby. By the time Huiyuti arrived, Lin Yi and the others were already prepared. Ning Xuefei and the others were all dressed in common world attire, looking young and pretty. They even had swimsuits and caps prepared, all of which were arranged from Lin Yi's jade space. Lin Yi was shocked the first time he saw these swimsuits. Why did Qintian put these things in? And there were all kinds of sizes and styles. He didn't know what the kid was thinking, but it came in handy now. Sister Hua. Hurry up. Let's go. Shengguan Lan waved from afar. She couldn't wait to go to the seaside and change into this trendy swimsuit. Ning Xuefei and Han Jingjing also waved at her. It seemed that they couldn't wait. They're here. Huiyuti forced a smile and hurriedly quickened her pace towards them. Sister Hua, look, this is the swimsuit we picked for you. Do you like it? Before Huiyuti got close, Ning Xuefei and the others took out a bikini mysteriously. Lin Yi's eyelids twitched as he subconsciously glanced at Huiyuti's curvaceous body. He couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. With this girl's body in such a sexy bikini, he was going to have a nosebleed today. What is this? Huiyuti took it and looked at it from top to bottom. In her eyes, this bikini was just two small pieces of cloth. It couldn't cover anything at all. Especially after noticing Lin Yi's reaction, she couldn't help but blush. Is this also a dress? Of course it's clothes. This is the most popular style in the secular world. Sister Hua, do you want to try it now? Yee. Han Jingjing winked mischievously. What? Huiyuti was startled. No matter how interested she was in the secular world, she was still a very conservative woman from the Heaven Stage Island. How could he dare to wear such clothes all of a sudden? He shook his head and said, I can't. Why not? How would you know if you don't try? I believe Sister Hua will look good in it, Ning Xuefei said with a smile. Yes. Anyway, there are no outsiders today. Sooner or later little junior brother will see it. There's no better time than now. Shanghai Laner smiled and grabbed the bikini to show it to Huiyuti. If it was a few days ago, Huiyuti might really give it a try after being egged on like this. However, she really wasn't in the mood today. She could only smile bitterly and shake her head. Sister Hua, why do I feel that you are a little depressed? Is something wrong? Ning Xuefei was the first to notice her strangeness. After looking at the others, she immediately asked. Yes, we are best friends and sisters. Sister Hua, you can't hide anything from us. Han Jingjing said immediately. Yesterday when they were talking about swimwear, they were eager to try it. However, now they suddenly became listless. She also vaguely guessed that there must be something wrong. If there's anything, just say it. Don't bear it alone. You still have us. Lin Yi also saw that there was something wrong with Huiyuti. This girl was not a person who could hide her thoughts. Not to mention that she didn't sleep all night and her eyes were bloodshot. Huiyuti looked at everyone hesitantly. Until she met Lin Yi's eyes, she suddenly felt wronged for no reason. Her eyes instantly turned red. Under the repeated questioning of Lin Yi and the others, she finally told them what happened last night. After listening to Huiyuti's narration, Lin Yi couldn't help but be speechless. He himself was an alchemist who couldn't be calculated with common sense. Originally, this kind of thing just happened to come in handy. However, the Thunder Shen pill was a 7th grade medicinal pill. He had tried to refine a variety of 7th grade medicinal pills several times before. The result was, without exception, all failures. Until now, Lin Yi still hadn't been able to sum up the reason. At first, he thought that it was because his true chi was not strong enough to refine 7th grade medicinal pills. However, after thinking about it, if it was really because of this reason, then it was simply impossible to refine medicinal pills. However, every time he failed, he could at least enter the normal procedure. If it was something else, Lin Yi thought that with his strength and all kinds of connections he could still boast about it. However, when it came to refining the Thunder Shen pill, he really had no way. Yudi, although I can also refine medicinal pills, perhaps because my level is not enough, I can't refine 7th grade medicinal pills for the time being. But I can guarantee that in the future, there will definitely be a way to break through. Looking at Hui Yudi's crying expression, Lin Yi could only bite the bullet and persuade her. When Hui Yudi heard this, she couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Although she also knew that this kind of thing was not very possible. For a super genius like Lin Yi, it was already very surprising that he had the leisure to become an alchemist. If he really could even refine 7th grade medicinal pills, then he could only be the illegitimate child of God. Super geniuses also had a limit. How could there be a person who was proficient in everything? How could they let others live? Ha 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 ha. While Lin Yi and Hui Yudi were frowning, Ning Xuefei, who was at the side, suddenly burst into laughter. She laughed so hard that she couldn't catch her breath, and couldn't straighten her back for a long time. Fei, what are you doing? Elder sister Hui is worried about something. Why are you still laughing? You are really heartless. Shengguan Laner pouted and asked. Lin Yi and Hui Yudi also looked at her, not knowing why she suddenly laughed. Wait a minute, let me catch my breath first. This matter is really too funny. Ning Xuefei didn't care about everyone's strange expression. She couldn't help but rub her stomach, and after resting for a while she replied, actually, the matter of refining a 7th grade medicinal pill is not because Lin Yi's level is not good, but because your medicine cauldron naturally cannot refine 7th grade medicinal pills. Chapter 4753. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about this before, but the Shinong medicine cauldron's heaven-defying performance was too deeply rooted in his heart, so he subconsciously felt that it was impossible. The possibility of the Shinong medicine cauldron having a problem was much smaller than the possibility of him having a problem. He didn't expect this to be the reason. Then Fei, why are you still laughing? The problem with the medicine cauldron is also a problem, and it's even more difficult to solve. You still have the mood to laugh at this time? Sister Huo will be forced to marry that hypocrite Ren Zhongyuan. Shanghai Laner said as she pounced on her and pinched her. Ning Xuefei quickly dodged and giggled at the same time. Of course it's funny. This is actually a very simple problem that can be solved in a short time, but all of you are so sad. Isn't this funny? Jing, what do you think? It's okay, it's a little funny. Han Jingjing's mouth also had a trace of an indescribable smile, and she covered her mouth as she laughed. What do you mean? What's the problem with the Shinong medicine cauldron that can be solved in a short time? Lin Yi was confused, and he quickly took Han Jingjing's hand and asked, Brother Lin Yi, don't worry. In fact, strictly speaking, this is not the Shinong medicine cauldron's problem. The hardware is fine, but the software inside needs to be upgraded. Han Jingjing giggled. Software. Lin Yi was stunned, and he didn't understand for a moment. What hardware and software? Where did this come from? Yes, the main reason the Shinong medicine cauldron can automatically refine pills is that Jing set up an intelligent analysis formula in the computer, right? Han Jingjing smiled, and when she saw Lin Yi nod, she continued to explain. The problem is that when Jing set up this formula, she didn't come into contact with such a high level. I have never come into contact with such a high level of knowledge. Most of the things in it are deduced purely from data, so the fact that this formula can persist until the 6th grade pill is still effective is already far beyond Jing's expectations. As for the 7th grade pill, Jing never thought that it would be of such a high level. Then what should we do? Although there were still some parts that he didn't understand, Lin Yi roughly understood. Just based on data deduction, it could reach the 6th grade pill. Han Jingjing was indeed a peerless genius. It's simple. Just ask Jing to help you level up, Ning Xuefei said with a smile. That's right, why am I so stupid? Looking at Han Jingjing, who was covering her mouth and laughing, Lin Yi slapped his forehead. Since Han Jingjing, the inventor, was beside him, upgrading the software was a piece of cake for her. No matter what, there were no outsiders around. Lin Yi immediately took out the godly pesticide cauldron. Hui Yudi was shocked again. Her attention was immediately diverted. She pointed at Lin Yi and the cauldron dumbfoundedly and said, Where did you come from? She had wanted to ask this question during the trial. If she could accept Lin Yi conjuring up pastries and clothes at the start, then when he collected the Thunder Mystic Vine, and especially when he made Scarface's pile of treasures disappear into thin air, there was no way to explain it. However, either the situation was urgent, or she was immersed in surprise and couldn't extricate herself. She had never thought of asking about it, but now that Lin Yi suddenly conjured an alchemy cauldron out of thin air, if she didn't ask clearly she would think that she was hallucinating. Hee, big brother Lin Yi, explain it properly. I'll help you level up now. Han Jingjing took the godly pesticide cauldron with a smile and brought Ning Xuefei and Shanghai Laner to the research room. Hui Yudi was left looking at him in a daze. Lin Yi smiled bitterly and spread his hands. He felt that there was no need to hide anything from her. So he explained, actually, I have a very unique jade pendant with me which carries a mysterious independent space. As long as I think about it, I can put things from the outside world in it and I can also take things out from it. Do you understand now? There's such a thing? Hui Yudi suddenly covered her mouth in surprise. She thought that it would be some brilliant camouflage, or that Lin Yi had an exquisite array that could be carried around. Although this kind of thing was rare, there had always been similar legends circulating in the streets. She didn't expect the answer to be so simple. Lin Yi had a magical jade pendant. Well, there are always some magical things that happen to me. You'll get used to it slowly. But remember to keep this a secret. Only you know about it. Lin Yi chuckled. Get used to it slowly? Listening to Lin Yi's calm tone, Hui Yudi could only roll her eyes speechlessly. She didn't know what to say. She was not a newcomer. After all, she was an expert at the great perfection of the Yuanying stage. Moreover, she was in a place like the East Continent College. Her knowledge was far from that of ordinary cultivators. Even so, she had never heard of such a strange thing as a jade pendant space. However, Lin Yi's words made Hui Yudi's heart jump. Lin Yi looked at Hui Yudi's expression and smiled. He didn't say anything. As the two talked, they came to Ning Xuefei's research room. At this time, Han Jingjing was focused on updating the AI analysis formula. Her 10 fingers were moving back and forth on the keyboard. Even with Lin Yi's eyesight, it was difficult for him to accurately capture her movements. He could only see a blurry shadow of her fingers, let alone others. Looking at this exaggerated scene, Hui Yudi couldn't help but cover her mouth again. She looked at Han Jingjing with eyes full of admiration. She was a typical example of someone who didn't understand. Previously, she thought that Han Jingjing was a cute and innocent girl who wasn't very strong. But now that she saw it, this girl was simply a genius. Sure enough, Lin Yi was full of magic everywhere. Lin Yi and Hui Yudi waited quietly at the side. He obviously couldn't interfere in updating the AI analysis formula. Han Jingjing could only rely on herself. After 2 years of nurturing, Ning Xuefei, who had a little understanding of this, helped her. As for Shanghai Laner and little Curly Bear, they were purely there to help. After about an hour, Han Jingjing suddenly stopped. She wiped the fine sweat on her forehead and smiled sweetly at Lin Yi. Big brother Lin Yi, now you can refine a 7th grade medicinal pill. It's done so quickly? Lin Yi was overjoyed when he heard this. It was not an exaggeration to say that the AI analysis formula was the top technology in the secular world. He thought that Han Jingjing would have to work hard for a few days. He didn't expect it to be done in just an hour. This efficiency was really surprising. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.